As Leon Hatman and the others gradually disappeared into the distance, Sebastian Faulkner still felt tense, finally letting out a sigh of relief, and then gently patted his chest, muttering to himself with a lingering sense of fear, "Oh, that was way too dangerous." Luckily, it was successful in stopping that guy. Whew, what a close call. Sebastian Faulkner thought, recalling the intense conflict between Leon Hatman and Ayla Voss. He basically didn't have time to call the police for help, and could only muster up the courage to stand up to the vicious Leon Hatman. But luckily, Leon Hatman was a coward and was easily intimidated, and Sebastian Faulkner was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. Adrian Mule gazed at Sebastian Faulkner's still shaken appearance, and couldn't help but feel a surge of warmth in his heart. He walked over and softly said, "Thanks to you, Sebastian Faulkner. We owe you one today." If Sebastian Faulkner hadn't helped out, Adrian Mule and Leon Hatman would have probably gotten into a conflict, which would have wasted a lot of time. Sebastian Faulkner looked up and met Adrian Mule's grateful gaze, his cheeks slightly flushed. "No need to thank me. You've helped me out before too. So what brings you here? Why did you take such a long break? And what were you doing when you rushed over here?" Sebastian Faulkner blinked his big round eyes, curiously staring at Adrian Mule, seemingly trying to read something from his expression. Adrian Mule's lips curled up into a faint smile, but he didn't immediately respond. He paused for a moment before replying, "Actually, there wasn't any particular reason, just some personal matters that needed to be taken care of, so I took a long break and happened to come here to take care of some things, only to run into Leon Hatman," he finished saying, and helplessly shrugged his shoulders, indicating that he hadn't expected it either. Elias Koenig and Gabriel Weiss were also present, and although they didn't say anything, they were both watching the exchange between Sebastian Faulkner and Adrian Mule with interest. Meanwhile, Claw Weiss and Victor Hale were chatting quietly to the side, discussing what had just happened. Damien Kelly and Celeste Beaumont were also there, observing the scene with thoughtful expressions. And although they didn't intervene, they were clearly concerned about the situation. After all, they had all just witnessed an intense confrontation between Leon Hatman and Adrian Mule, and were still trying to process what had happened. Sebastian Faulkner listened intently, his eyes narrowing slightly as a hint of concern flickered across his face, before he nodded gently, and then Leon Hatman whispered, "So you have to be careful. Okay. If you encounter any difficulties, remember to look for me. Although I may not be able to help with major issues, but at least I can offer some advice." His words were filled with sincerity and concern, and Adrian Mule's heart immediately swelled with warm feelings, touched beyond words. He nodded vigorously, responding, "Yeah, thanks. You also need to take care of yourself. Especially beware of that Damien Kelly." "Ha ha! Don't worry. I'm 120% at ease. I'm not just anyone. You know?" Ayla Voss smiled mischievously and pulled out a small, cute can of pepper spray from her bag, holding it up and shaking it in front of Adrian Mule. "See? This is my secret weapon. With this in hand, no matter how reckless Damien Kell is, he won't dare come near me," she said with a wink. Adrian Mule was amused by Ayla Voss's innocence and cleverness, taking the can of pepper spray from her, pretending to examine it seriously before laughing and saying, "I think I'll have to prepare some secret weapons like this too." The two of them looked at each other, smiling, and the atmosphere became much more relaxed. Meanwhile, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale seemed to be enjoying the light-hearted moment as they observed the gentle exchange between Sebastian Faulkner and Ayla Voss, their faces filled with gentle, thoughtful expressions. Leon Hatman glanced at his watch, realizing he couldn't delay any further, and with a serious expression, said, "Sebastian, I must continue on my way to work. I truly appreciate your help today. And in the future, I'll definitely invite you to dinner as a thank you." Sebastian nodded, a hint of reluctance flickering in his eyes, but he still smiled and said, "All right, I'll wait for your big party. Don't forget to come back soon." Leon Hatman assured him, "Don't worry, I won't disappoint you." And the two of them exchanged numbers on WeChat to stay in touch. After some thought, Leon Hatman felt that Sebastian was a decent person and perhaps should be warned. So he continued, "Sebastian, for the next few days, it's best if you don't come to the wall. Just stay home and prepare some essential items and try to avoid going out. I've received some internal news that suggests the situation might be unstable lately." Leon Hatman didn't directly mention the potential catastrophe that could be looming, as explaining such a complex and sensitive topic would be too complicated, and if others didn't believe him, it would only lead to unnecessary doubts and worries. So he chose to warn Sebastian in a relatively indirect way, hoping he would pay attention and take corresponding precautions. Sebastian listened, his eyebrows slightly furrowed, a hint of skepticism flashing in his eyes. But Leon Hatman's serious expression moved him, and he softly asked, "What's going on? Why are you saying this?" Leon Hatman let out a deep sigh, his eyes gazing into the distance, as if weighing his words. "There are some things I still can't discuss in detail, but please trust me, it's always better to be prepared. The world can be more complicated and unpredictable than we imagine." Sebastian looked deeply into Leon Hatman's eyes, seeing a determination and depth he had never seen before. And then Leon Hatman added, "Just remember what I said, and be careful. Allah Voss and Adrian Mule might not be aware of the situation, but Celeste Beaumont and Elias Koenig could be useful in the coming days. And as for Gabriel Weiss and Sebastian Falkny, they should be cautious. Damian Kelly and Claw Weiss might have some information, but it's hard to say. And Victor Hale, well, his role in all this is still unclear. But one thing is certain, the situation is more complex than it seems, and only time will tell what will happen next." As she gently bit her lip and nodded, Leon Hatman thought to himself, "I will be careful." After bidding farewell to Allah Voss, he got on his three-wheeled vehicle and continued to search for a suitable location. And finally, just before nightfall, he found a place that met his requirements, located in the heart of the city, near large supermarkets, hotels, and hospitals. After careful consideration, Leon Hatman decided to rest at a hotel with a great geographical location. This hotel was not only close to the supermarket and hospital, but the surrounding traffic was also very convenient. It could be said that all directions were accessible. More importantly, from the room, the view outside was extremely broad. No matter which direction he looked, he could take it all in. This would help him always pay attention to the changes in the surrounding environment and respond to emergencies in a timely manner. Upon arriving at the hotel, Leon Hatman did not rush to rest. Instead, he decided to take a walk around, to familiarize himself with the specific terrain. After all, only when he had a complete understanding of the situation could he remain calm in the face of danger and make wise decisions. As the sun set and the night fell, the city lit up, the bright lights twinkling like stars. At this time, the noise in the city seemed to have subsided, but for Leon Hatman, standing there, he did not feel any sense of comfort. He stood silently in front of the window, his eyes fixed on the bustling street outside. Occasionally, the sound of car horns and distant laughter drifted into his ears. In this quiet night, it seemed even more abrupt. Looking at the familiar, yet strange scene before him. Leon Hatman couldn't help but think, perhaps it won't be long before all these good things disappear. Thinking of this, a feeling of indescribable heaviness rose up in his heart. Meanwhile, Adrian Mule, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Faulkner, Damien Kelly, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale were all going about their own business, unaware of the changes that were about to take place. As Leon Hatman continued to observe the surroundings, he knew that he had to be prepared for anything that might happen, and he was determined to protect the people and the city he cared about. As the final 24 hours before the apocalypse ticked away, Leon Hatman didn't dare waste a single moment, rising with the sun and quickly settling his affairs before temporarily leaving his hotel, first heading to a nearby supermarket to survey the layout as thoroughly as possible, taking mental note of the locations of various essential items, such as electronics and phones on the first floor, and fresh produce and snacks on the second, so he could gather them swiftly into his spatial ring the following day. Leon Hatman also made sure to commit the emergency exit routes to memory, preparing for any unexpected situations. And afterward, he visited a hospital to familiarize himself with its surroundings, then had a meal outside before returning to his hotel to rest and recharge. In the evening, Ela Voss called Leon Hatman, and they exchanged reassurances, Ela Voss's voice laced with a hint of worry. But she strove to remain calm, asking, "Leon, how are things on your end? You must be careful." To which Leon Hatman responded reassuringly, "Don't worry, I'm fine. I've got everything under control. I've memorized the layouts of the supermarket and hospital, and I'll take action tomorrow, aiming to complete my task as soon as possible and return," prompting Ela Voss to faintly furrow her brow, release a soft sigh, and gradually relax her tense expression as the initial anxiety began to dissipate. Meanwhile, other key figures like Adrian Mule, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Faulkner, Damien Kelly, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale were also preparing for the impending apocalypse, each playing their part in the grand scheme, with Leon Hatman at the forefront, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The gentle voice of Ela Voss was as soft as a spring breeze, faintly echoing. I understand you're incredibly powerful and talented now, but still, when taking action, you must be extremely cautious. Remember, no matter where you are or when, your own safety is the most important thing." And upon hearing these words, deep within Leon Hatman's heart, a warm feeling touched him, instantly causing ripples to rise. He knew his sister always put him first. The deep concern she had for him had never wavered. Ever since their parents sadly passed away, Ela Voss had devoted herself to taking care of him. Whenever he was bullied, it was always Ela Voss who stood up for him, personally resolving the issues. And even the smallest things in life were taken care of by Ela Voss. This deep sibling bond had long become an indispensable part of Leon Hatman's life. At this moment, Leon Hatman's eyes were as firm as a rock, his tone strong and determined as he replied, "Sister, please be at ease. I promise I'll return unscathed." Hanging up the phone, Leon Hatman sat by the bed, gazing out the window at the dark night sky. He closed his eyes, deeply wishing for the next day to be smooth, while also preparing himself to face any challenges. The next morning, with only 2 hours left before the apocalypse, Leon Hatman was ready. He took a deep breath, retrieved the Long Wen sword from the spatial ring on his waist, and stepped out of the hotel with a determined stride. The sky was gloomy, the thick, dark clouds like heavy weights pressing down. The world seemed to be shrouded in a gray mist, giving off a depressing and suffocating feeling. As he walked, he encountered Adian Mule, who was standing with a serious expression alongside Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Faulkney, and Damian Kelly, while Claw Weiss and Victor Hale were also present, their faces set with determination, ready to face the impending disaster together. The gloomy weather seemed like a bad omen, hinting at a large disaster looming on the horizon. It was a Friday, and the streets were crowded with people rushing to and fro, some carrying heavy backpacks or briefcases, their footsteps quick and determined as they headed to their respective workplaces, their faces revealing exhaustion and helplessness, their eyes exuding a sense of fatigue and desperation with life. Leon Hatman walked into a street food stall and said, "Give me a bowl of spicy hot noodles." Okay, coming right up. The owner swiftly prepared the dish, and soon a steaming bowl of hot noodles was placed in front of Leon. He quickly finished the simple but energizing meal, feeling the warmth spreading through his stomach and throughout his body, like a boost of energy for his upcoming actions. As the appointed time drew near, Leon once again confirmed his plan, making sure every detail was accurate. Then he got up, paid for his meal, nodded in gratitude to the owner, and turned to head towards the supermarket, with only an hour left before the apocalypse. According to the plan from the previous night, Leon first went to the supermarket, his finger lightly tapping on the shelf filled with snacks. Taking advantage of the moment when the supermarket staff were not paying attention, the spatial ring on his hand flickered, and the goods on the shelf disappeared. Next, Leon utilized his familiarity with the terrain, quickly and neatly storing food, snacks, water, and other necessary items into the spatial ring. Ala Voss's eyes sparkled as she thought about the plan. Adian Mula stood by her side, his expression calm and collected. Celeste Beaumont and Elias Koenig were also present, their faces set with determination. Gabriel Weiss and Sebastian Faulkney were discussing the final details. While Damian Kelly and Claw Weiss were keeping watch, Victor Hale was standing guard, his eyes scanning the surroundings. The group was ready to face whatever was coming their way. "Oh, the products I just arranged have all disappeared, and the shelves over here are also empty. What's going on?" Quickly report to the manager. Hurry up and check the camera. But soon, the supermarket staff discovered something unusual, hastily reporting and preparing to review the camera footage to investigate the cause. Leon Hatman was not in a hurry, because the end of the world had already begun counting down, ticking away. The end of the world is approaching. Please be prepared. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The end of the world has arrived. When the countdown ended, the sky suddenly turned blood red. This strange and terrifying scene left countless people amazed. They all looked up, their eyes fixed on the unprecedented sky. Almost at the same time, the sky started raining. This rain was not limited to the city, but quickly spread throughout the country and even globally. Every corner was covered by this sudden rain. What was astonishing was that these raindrops were blood red, just like the sky. They were like rubies falling from the sky, shimmering with an eerie light. However, when these blood raindrops fell to the ground or on people's bodies, they disappeared at an astonishing speed, as if they had never appeared. This rain came and went quickly, but the speed at which it stopped was also astonishing. It only lasted for 3 minutes, and then it stopped completely. Adian Mule, Ella Voss, and Celeste Beaumont were all shocked by this sudden and mysterious phenomenon, while Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, and Sebastian Faulkner were trying to understand the cause of this blood rain. Damian Kelly was observing the sky, and Claw Weiss was checking the camera footage. Victor Hale was discussing with the others, trying to find a solution to this unprecedented event. And Leon Hatman was calmly watching, as if he knew something that the others did not. As everyone was marveling at the incredible scene, something unexpected happened. Those who had been drenched by the rain, with open wounds and exposed to the rainwater, suddenly collapsed to the ground without any warning signs. Their normally pale faces turned as white as paper, and the breath of life vanished in the blink of an eye. A distraught mother, her face etched with horror and worry, frantically shook her unconscious child in her arms, screaming hoarsely. Her son, Leon Hatman, had just recently broken his arm from a careless fall and had only just returned home from the hospital after being treated, and now, after being caught in the mysterious rain, he had lost consciousness and fallen into a deep coma, as the mother desperately called out to her son, Leon Hatman, who was lying still in her arms, suddenly convulsed violently, and the convulsions grew stronger, as if some invisible force was controlling him. And then, his tightly closed eyes suddenly opened, but to the mother's terror, his bright eyes had turned a dull gray, devoid of any life. With a series of eerie cracking sounds, Leon Hatman's body continued to convulse, his limbs twisting and contorting in ways that defied human understanding. His mother, Ella Voss, was horrified, backing away in fear as the sound of grinding bones echoed through the streets, sending shivers down the spines of all who heard it. Amidst the chaos, Adrien Mule, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkny, Damien Kell, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale all stood by, frozen in shock, unable to comprehend the terrifying scene unfolding before their eyes. As the agonizing convulsions finally subsided, Leon Hatman's face, once contorted in a mixture of pain and desperation, slowly returned to a state of calm, the violent spasms ceasing to rack his small frame, an ordeal that seemed to have lasted an eternity, but in reality only spanned about a minute. Leaving his mother, Ella Voss, shaken, her face etched with tears, her hands clenched into fists, her fingernails digging deep into her palms, as she stood frozen, mere steps away from her son, her heartbeat racing with fear and anxiety. And when she saw Leon's convulsions cease, her heart, which had been suspended in mid-air, finally began to drop. But she still couldn't shake off the feeling of unease, her steps tentative as she approached him, calling out in a quivering voice, like a leaf rustling in the wind. "Leon? Oh, Leon. Are you okay? Mom's here." But before she could finish speaking, a shocking turn of events occurred, as Leon suddenly whipped his head around, his gray eyes filled with a bloody gaze, revealing a fierce and menacing stare that sent shivers down her spine, and in an instant, he transformed into a ferocious beast, biting down hard on his mother's neck, tearing into her main artery, prompting a blood-curdling scream to echo through the streets. A sound so haunting, it was like a sharp blade piercing the hearts of all who witnessed it, leaving them aghast, their faces pale and paralyzed with fear, as some brave souls even pulled out their phones, capturing the horrific scene, completely oblivious to the danger that was unfolding, while others, who had been wounded by the mysterious rain, began to exhibit signs of transformation, their faces twisted into grotesque, bloodthirsty masks as they attacked the nearest person. And in the blink of an eye, the city was plunged into chaos, awash with blood and panic, as Adrien Mule, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkny, Damien Kelly, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale all found themselves caught up in the mayhem, struggling to survive as the world around them descended into madness. As Leon Hatman and Ella Voss rushed through the chaotic streets, they stumbled upon a horrific scene, with people running wildly, their faces etched with desperation and fear, while others shrieked in terror, their cries echoing through the air, pleading for someone to save them, with one man, Adrian Mueller, desperately trying to rescue his loved one, Celeste Beaumont, from the clutches of a gruesome zombie, its face twisted in a snarl as he yelled at the top of his lungs, begging the creature to release her. But it was too late. The zombie's sharp claws had already sunk deep into her skin, and as she let out a blood-curdling scream, more people fell victim to the undead, their bodies contorting in agony as they fell to the ground, transforming into zombies before the very eyes of Leon, Allah, and their friends, including Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkney, and Damian Kelly, who were trying to make sense of the chaos, while Claw Weiss and Victor Hale fought to protect themselves and their companions from the ever-growing horde of undead as the streets descended into madness, with the zombie apocalypse spreading rapidly, and the group struggling to survive, with Leon and his friends realizing they had to act fast to stay alive, as they tried to find a way to escape the carnage and rescue those who were still alive, including Celeste, who had fallen victim to the zombies and was now one of them. Her transformation, a grim reminder of the dangers that lurked around every corner as the group fought to stay one step ahead of the undead, with their lives hanging in the balance, and their hopes of survival slowly dwindling as the zombies closed in, their numbers seemingly endless, and their thirst for human flesh insatiable. As the once bustling streets transformed into a hellish landscape, blood splattered everywhere, with severed limbs strewn about. The number of undead grew at an alarming rate, like a massive tide sweeping in, relentlessly pursuing the uninfected, tearing them apart with brutal ferocity. And in the hospital, the scene was even more horrific, with the highest number of casualties and initial infected cases being utterly shocking. The air was filled with mournful sighs, screams, and the wail of medical equipment, creating a desperate symphony. The doctors and nurses struggled to maintain order, but their strength was no match for the overwhelming wave of undead. And soon, they too fell victim to the infected, being bitten and overwhelmed as blood poured everywhere, and the undead roamed freely. The city was transformed into a complete abyss, and Leon Hatman stood silently in front of the large glass window on the second floor of the mall, his eyes fixed on the horrific scene below. A group of frantic people were desperately running for their lives, with the undead closing in, their ferocious faces contorted in a snarl, issuing menacing growls, as if they wanted to devour the entire world. And anyone caught by the undead would be brutally torn apart, disemboweled, and eventually turn into one of them, joining the relentless pursuit of the living. And as Leon watched the people being chased by the undead, his heart felt unusually heavy, as if 5 different emotions were swirling together, an intricate and indescribable mix. And Dela Voss, Adrian Mueller, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkney, Damian Kelly, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale were all caught up in this desperate fight for survival as the world around them continued to crumble and the undead hordes closed in, their fate hanging precariously in the balance. As Leon Hatman had anticipated the impending disaster and prepared himself numerous times, he smiled and nodded, beginning to inspect the packaged meals, with stacks of hot and fragrant boxed lunches neatly arranged on the 3-wheeled vehicle resembling small mountains. Then he paid the owner and drove the 3-wheeled vehicle to a secluded location where he stored all the boxed lunches in his spatial ring, and as the distance between the two sides grew shorter, the tense atmosphere became increasingly oppressive. However, at this critical moment, Leon Hatman demonstrated his astonishing reaction speed and driving skills, suddenly slamming on the brakes and quickly turning the handlebars, then unexpectedly steering the 3-wheeled vehicle to one side. Due to inertia, The rear of the vehicle lost control and started spinning wildly. This sudden change caught the zombies off guard. They were unable to react in time and were struck by the spinning rear of the vehicle, sending them flying. A series of dull crashes accompanied by the zombies' screams echoed through the air. They were thrown in all directions, falling to the ground and thrashing about. Leon Hatman took advantage of this opportunity to jump off the three-wheeled vehicle. The icy glow of his sword flashed through the air, precisely striking the head of the nearest zombie, eliminating one zombie and earning him 10 accumulated points. Nearby, Ela of Voss, Adian Mule, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkney, Damien Kelle, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale all watched in awe as Leon Hatman's incredible driving skills and swordsmanship allowed him to effortlessly take down the zombies. As the first zombie crumpled to the ground with a loud crack of breaking bones, Leon Hatman swiftly and precisely sliced through the remaining undead, each swing of his blade sending another zombie crashing down, his movements a blur of speed and accuracy. And just then, Ayla Voss, who was trapped in the mangled car, realized her rescuer was Leon Hatman, a glimmer of hope igniting in her eyes as she gazed upon his steadfast figure, a beacon of light in the darkness that had been suffocating her. And before long, Leon Hatman had dispatched the last of the zombies and hastened to the car, grasping the mangled door handle and pulling with all his might, finally managing to yank it open, only to be hit with a pungent smell of blood and burnt metal. But Leon Hatman didn't hesitate, scrambling inside to cut free Ela Voss from her seatbelt, and once she was safe, he swept her into his arms and sped back to the rickety three-wheeled vehicle, where he quickly started the engine and sped away from the treacherous area, leaving the danger behind. And Ela Voss, her voice barely above a whisper, thanked him, her tone laced with a mix of relief and emotion, as she clutched at Leon Hatman's clothes with her blood-stained hands, holding on tightly, still trying to process the ordeal she had just endured, and the heroic actions of her rescuer, Leon Hatman, who had saved her from the jaws of death. And as they sped away, Adian Mula, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkney, and Damien Kell were all watching from a distance, while Claw Weiss and Victor Hale were on their way to meet up with them, unaware of the intense scenes that had just unfolded, but grateful that Ela Voss was safe thanks to Leon Hatman's bravery and quick thinking. It seems that only this could bring a bit of comfort and a sense of security to Leon Hatman's frightened and anxious heart. However, he didn't turn his head. He calmly and softly responded, "We're classmates, so we should do this." Just then, a severe and urgent situation broke the short-lived silence. Gasping for air, Ela Voss lay weakly on the back of the tricycle, suddenly spitting up a mouthful of bright red blood. Afterwards, her breathing became more and more urgent and shallow. Surprisingly, although the horrific car accident didn't cause any obvious external injuries to Ela Voss, in reality, her internal organs had been severely damaged due to the intense impact. Her injuries were extremely severe. If she couldn't receive effective treatment in time, she would likely struggle to escape death. Her life was hanging by a thread. Adian Mula's heart sank. He realized the situation was much more critical than he had imagined. Adian Mula's heart sank. He realized the situation was much more critical than he had imagined, although the zombies surrounding them had temporarily been held off. Ela Voss's condition was like a sharp sword hanging over their heads. It could fall at any moment. He quickly calculated the feasible options. At the same time, he sped up the tricycle, trying to find a glimmer of hope for survival. Hang in there, Ela Voss. We'll soon find a safe place. Adian Mula's voice was calm but couldn't hide his worry and determination. He knew that in this apocalyptic world, every minute and every second was crucial. Suddenly, Adi and Mula's eyes lit up. Not far ahead, there was a residential area. Hopefully, they could find the help they desperately needed. Meanwhile, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Faulkner, Damien Kelly, Claude Weiss, and Victor Hale were all trying to stay safe and find a way to escape the zombies. But for now, Adi and Mule's priority was to save Ayla Voss's life. He was racing against time to get her the medical attention she needed. The fate of his classmate hung in the balance, and he was determined to do everything in his power to save her. Leon Hatman rode his three-wheeled vehicle straight into the residential area called Kim High, where the eerie atmosphere was palpable, and the gate was covered in bloodstains, hinting at a brutal battle that had taken place. Undoubtedly, this place had also been attacked by the terrifying zombies. Leon Hatman did not rush into action. Instead, he carefully turned the vehicle around the entire residential area, his sharp eyes scanning every nook and cranny, leaving no clue unexamined. After a while, he concluded that the zombies seemed to have left. Once he confirmed the surroundings were relatively safe, Leon Hatman parked his vehicle under a building, took a deep breath, and loudly called out, "Is anyone there? Can you provide us with a safe place to rest for a while?" His voice echoed through the air, but there was no response. Undeterred by the silence, Leon Hatman had anticipated this situation. In a world filled with danger and uncertainty, people often prioritize their own safety, making it difficult to trust strangers. Nevertheless, Leon Hatman remained optimistic. He quickly retrieved a large bag of supplies from his spatial ring, containing instant noodles, bread, and other food items. Then, he increased his volume, shouting, "I have enough supplies here. If anyone is willing to take us in, we'll rest for just 3 days, and all of these will belong to you." As soon as he finished speaking, a faint noise came from a nearby building, followed by a window being carefully opened, revealing a girl, around 18 or 19 years old, with a cautious gaze. Ayla Voss, Adi and Mula, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Faulkner, Damien Kelly, Claude Weiss, and Victor Hale were all waiting to see how the situation would unfold. As Leon Hatman's words hung in the air, the girl's eyes darted back and forth, weighing her options. Her gaze locked on to Leon Hatman, sizing him up, before responding, her voice barely above a whisper, "What makes you think we can trust you?" Leon Hatman smiled, understanding her concerns, and began to explain. "We're not looking to harm anyone. We just need a place to rest, and we're willing to trade our supplies for it." The girl's eyes narrowed, considering the proposal. As the silence stretched on, Leon Hatman could sense the girl's uncertainty. He decided to add, "We'll leave as soon as the 3 days are up, and we won't cause any trouble." The girl's gaze lingered on Leon Hatman before she finally responded, "Okay, you can come in, but if you try anything, you'll regret it." Leon Hatman nodded, relieved, and began to gather his supplies. As he entered the building, he was met with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion from the people inside, including Ayla Voss, Adi and Mula, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Faulkner, Damien Kelly, Claude Weiss, and Victor Hale, who were all watching him, waiting to see if he would keep his word and prove himself to be a trustworthy ally in this desperate world where survival was a daily struggle. Leon Hatman said with a tone that was both gentle and cautious. His voice trembled slightly as he proposed the idea to Ayla Voss, who looked at him with a mixture of surprise and suspicion, her eyes wide with unease. Leon Hatman quickly nodded and held up a bag of supplies in his hand to show his sincerity, ensuring her that all they needed was a safe place to rest, as his friend, Celeste Beaumont, was severely injured and in dire need of medical attention. His words exuded a sense of determination and urgent appeal. After a brief but tense exchange, Allah Voss finally agreed to let Leon Hatman and Adion Mule into a room in her house to take temporary refuge. Leon Hatman carefully picked up Adion Mule and stored his three-wheeled vehicle in a spatial ring, then carried Adion Mule upstairs. They walked through the dark corridor, heading straight to the floor where Allah Voss was. Her name was actually Allah Voss, and this room was a dormitory for company employees. She had stayed home from work today due to illness, but unexpectedly escaped a disaster. When she felt a bit better, she was about to order takeout, but suddenly saw many reminder messages on her phone. These messages were all warnings not to go out. Ayla Voss was skeptical, but opened the latest news, only to discover that during her sleep, the world had broken out in a zombie crisis. Although it was a company dormitory, the food in the dormitory was really scarce. Meanwhile, other characters like Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkny, Damian Kelly, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale were not present in this scene, but their presence would be crucial in the upcoming events, as Leon Hatman and Adian Mula tried to find a way to survive in this new and terrifying world, alongside Ayla Voss, who was still trying to come to terms with the new reality. Leon Hatman was unaware of the other neighbors in the community, and it was unlikely that anyone would be willing to spare valuable resources to help others, especially during difficult times. But just as she was struggling, she heard Allah Voss calling out from downstairs. So she decided to trade some resources to get through the hardship, and after Allah Voss and Victor Hale introduced themselves, they immediately went into the room, where Adian Mule gently laid Celeste Beaumont on the bed, her face as pale as paper, her breathing extremely weak, and he instantly searched his spatial ring for a first aid kit, starting to stop the bleeding and bandage her wounds. Although these measures were only a drop in the ocean compared to her severe internal injuries, but at least they could temporarily alleviate her pain. And Victor Hale also helped find some clean towels and water. And together, they cleaned Celeste Beaumont's wounds. Time seemed to stand still. Every minute and every second felt incredibly long. The room was filled with a heavy and suffocating atmosphere, and Leon Hatman furrowed his brow, his veins bulging with worry. He knew that with the current conditions, it was almost impossible to completely cure Celeste Beaumont's injuries. The most urgent thing was to find a way to get professional and more effective medical treatment, and just as Leon Hatman was thinking, a sudden idea flashed through his mind. He had a powerful system that always provided him with unexpected help and surprises when he was in danger. Thinking of this, Leon Hatman felt a glimmer of hope, and his eyes shone with a ray of light, and meanwhile, Damian Kelly, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkny, Elias Koenig, Claw Weiss were also trying to find ways to save Celeste Beaumont, but the situation was getting more and more critical, and it seemed that only Leon Hatman's system could bring them a chance of survival. Leon Hatman tried to appear calm, turning to Allah Voss beside him and softly speaking, "Allah, could you help me cook these instant noodles?" As he spoke, he casually handed Ayla a few packages of instant noodles, some boiled eggs, and sausages, attempting to find an excuse for her to temporarily leave. This person was truly thoughtless. Their friend had been unconscious for a while, yet they still had the audacity to think about eating instant noodles. Ayla silently understood, but didn't say much, only nodding obediently and taking the food before quietly leaving the room. After confirming Ayla had left, Adian Mula didn't dare to hesitate, immediately accessing the system interface and quickly entering the store to search carefully. Whenever he visited a place, merchants expressed extreme enthusiasm towards Adian Mule, everyone wanting to form long-term partnerships with him. And now this dream had become a reality thanks to the system's surprise gift package. Additionally, what excited Adian Mule even more was that the package included a Dize Eagle, which normally required 2,000 accumulated points to purchase in the system store. A truly enormous asset. Overjoyed, Adian Mule couldn't contain his excitement, instinctively letting out a soft whoop. He eagerly took the D-Eagle out of the system's storage and cradled it in his hands, feeling the heavy, metallic weight, which gave him an indescribable sense of stability. Adian Mule had previously only used similar weapons in virtual game worlds, but now, actually holding it in his hands, the realistic feel and weight of it left him with an unprecedented shock. Meanwhile, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falcone, Damien Kelly, Claude Weiss, and Victor Hale were not present in the scene, but their absence did not affect Adian Mule's excitement as he continued to marvel at the DAC Eagle. As Leon Hatman meticulously examined every detail of the gun, he gently stroked the smooth barrel and intricate trigger, admiring it as if it were a precious work of art, and in this moment, he was completely enamored with the Dize Eagle, almost reluctant to put it down. Meanwhile, Ala Voss, with her knowledge of firearms, quickly grasped how to use it, a wide smile spreading across her face. Just as she was joyfully fiddling with the gun, a scratching sound came from outside, and Adian Mule's heart began to beat rapidly, his grip on the Dize Eagle tightening involuntarily. He swiftly picked up the gun and approached the door, pressing his ear against it to listen for any movement outside. The scratching grew more urgent, accompanied by labored breathing and occasional clattering, indicating that the person outside had malicious intentions. A rough voice muttered, "Damn, I hope this house has food. Maybe some kid is trading a large bag of food to get in. Then we'll break in, kill that person, and I'll go find the food. What's the big deal about killing someone? We're surrounded by zombies. Who cares if we kill or not?" Another voice chimed in. "And what about the little kid in the room? If it's a girl, we can keep her as a plaything. If not, we'll let her die with the other person. Ha ha. And I've never even tasted a woman before." The two crude voices outside were hatching a plan, with Celeste Beaumont just a door away, listening in on their disturbing conversation, her face immediately darkening, a glint of coldness flashing in her eyes, as she was shocked by the depth of human depravity in this post-apocalyptic world. Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, and Sebastian Falcone seemed to be nearby, but their attention was focused elsewhere, unaware of the danger lurking outside, while Damien Kella and Claude Weiss were seemingly engaged in a separate activities, and Victor Hale was somewhere in the distance, as Leon Hatman stood frozen, his mind reeling with the ominous conversation he had just overheard. Leon Hatman gently loaded his DZ Eagle, the sound of the mechanism echoing through the air as he prepared for the danger that was to come, his every move exuding an unwavering determination. And as he thought to himself, he adjusted his breathing, getting ready to face the peril that awaited him, first scanning his surroundings to confirm that Sebastian Falcone and Ella Voss were both in safe positions, before leaning against the wall, standing in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Meanwhile, outside, the sound of forcing the door grew more intense, until finally, the lock could no longer withstand it, emitting a crisp cracking sound as the door swung open, and two figures, silhouetted by the light, peered into the hall. "Ah, indeed, there's food," one of them whispered, spotting the instant noodles on the guest table, the knife in his hand glinting in the cold light. But before they could even fully break into a smile, their faces froze, as Leon Hatman, like a ghost, emerged from the darkness, his hand grasping the DC Eagle, Radiating a chilling aura, the black barrel steadily trained on the two individuals before him. Damn it, this little kid isn't even sleeping. And he's daring to wield a toy gun, threatening people. One of them sneered, filled with disdain, knowing that firearms in this land were strictly controlled, and ordinary people could never get their hands on them. Therefore, he naturally assumed that what Leon Hatman was holding was just a toy gun, incapable of dealing any real damage. And with that, the man continued to stride in, completely unafraid of Leon Hatman, as Adian Mule and Celeste Beaumont watched from a safe distance, while Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, and Victor Hale were also waiting for the perfect moment to intervene. And Claw Weiss stood calmly, observing the scene unfold, as Damien Kella remained vigilant, ready to provide backup if needed. Leon Hatman will soon have to pay a steep price for his foolishness and recklessness, as Alavos hears a loud, ear-piercing gunshot, and without hesitation, Adian Mule pulls the trigger, his eagle handgun emitting a deafening roar like a provoked lion, shattering the night's silence, the deadly bullet shooting with astonishing speed and accuracy through the first intruder's body. The intense impact, sending them flying backward like a kite with a broken string, crashing to the ground with a thud, motionless and silent. As Celeste Beaumont utters, "Sorry, this is a real gun," the scene unfolding too suddenly, leaving the second intruder frozen in shock, their smile instantly replaced with fear and horror, their eyes wide with disbelief, staring at their fallen comrade lying in a pool of blood, and the still smoking eagle handgun in Adian Mule's hand, trying to speak, but their fear has left them almost speechless, as Adian Mule's gaze remains icy and unyielding, swiftly turning the gun and firing another shot. The second gunshot again rupturing the night, its echo reverberating through the room like the pronouncement of death. The second intruder meeting the same fate, their body convulsing before slowly collapsing, their eyes filled with resentment and despair. Adian Mule standing firm, having taken a life for the first time, his breathing a bit rapid but his eyes unwavering, as Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkny, Damien Kelly, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale watch, their expressions grave and concerned, the weight of the situation settling in, with no one daring to make a sound. The only noise, the heavy breathing of Adian Mule, and the faint smell of gunpowder lingering in the air. Leon Hatman nodded in agreement, her eyes fixed on Adian Mule with trust and dependence, knowing that he was now the pillar of their little group, and with him by their side, they had a better chance of survival. After the events that had transpired, Ella Voss was too frightened to sleep, and could only sit on the sofa, scrolling through her phone to catch up on the latest news. The next morning, Adian Mule called Celeste Beaumont to check in and ensure each other's safety. While Ella Voss was distracted, he discreetly retrieved some food from his spatial ring and offered it to her, suggesting she eat something and then try to get some rest, assuring her that he would keep watch. Ella Voss took the bread, unwrapped it, and took a bite, but then shook her head, still not feeling sleepy. She told Adian Mule to go get some sleep, promising to call him if anything happened. Adian Mule looked at Ella Voss's determined gaze and nodded, softly saying, "All right, you should also get some rest and not overexert yourself." He then turned and headed into Sebastian Falkny's room, lays down on the bed, and was about to drift off, feeling a bit exhausted from the previous night's ordeal. As he lay there, Adian Mule didn't fall asleep right away, first placing his handgun under the pillow, prepared for any potential danger, allowing him to defend himself if needed. As the night wore on, Leon Hatman couldn't shake off the horrific scenes from the previous night, including the first time he had ever fired a gun and taken a life, and his mind kept replaying those moments, though his heart was still reeling from the shock. He also knew that in this post-apocalyptic world, he absolutely couldn't afford to be soft. Survival was the top priority, and he had to remain calm and vigilant to protect himself and those around him. After thinking it over, Leon Hatman unknowingly dozed off, but it wasn't long before Ela Voss's voice echoed through the living room. Carrying an indescribable sense of tension, she was calling out while rushing towards the bedroom, at which point Leon Hatman, who was lying on the floor, suddenly jolted awake, his body quickly reacting like an agile leopard springing up from the ground. At the same time, he instinctively reached under the pillow and grabbed his pistol. Just as Leon Hatman opened the bedroom door, he collided with Ela Voss, who was about to rush in, and the two of them lost their balance and fell backwards. It was unclear how many of them would still be alive a month after the disaster. Leon Hatman's heart was filled with emotion, but his hands didn't stop moving. It was as if Leon Hatman's body was being controlled by an invisible force. Meanwhile, Adrian Mule, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkny, Damien Kelly, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale were all on high alert, waiting to see what would happen next. As the situation continued to unfold, Leon Hatman's thoughts were still reeling from the events of the previous night, and the weight of his actions was still sinking in. But he knew he had to keep moving forward, for the sake of survival and the sake of those around him. Leon Hatman knew that once those undead creatures stormed into the building, the consequences would be unimaginable, and Ela Voss cried out, "Dad, wake up, get up and fight back. This guy bit me so hard." As she wept, her tears streaming down like a broken dam, while Adrian Mule's lifeless body lay on the ground, and Celeste Beaumont wailed in despair, her voice echoing through the air. But fate seemed to show no mercy to this poor soul, as in the blink of an eye, more than 10 ferocious undead creatures with hideous faces and a foul stench, like hungry tigers, pounced on him, pinning him to the ground, and they tore at his body with their sharp claws like savage beasts. And just a few seconds later, a horrific scene unfolded as a group of undead creatures easily ripped open his stomach with their sharp claws. And in that moment, blood splattered everywhere, and his intestines and other organs spilled out, and what was even more terrifying, another undead creature, unafraid, thrust its head into the gaping hole and began to gnaw at his flesh. The excruciating pain causing Adrian Mule's body to emit blood-curdling screams that reverberated through the air, making people's hair stand on end. And this scene not only shocked Elias Koenig, but also filled those hiding in the building with even more horror and despair. And Gabriel Weiss knew that now was not the time to hesitate. He had to get out of there quickly, or else the entire neighborhood would be plunged into an abyss of despair. And Sebastian Falkny and Damien Kelly were also aware of the urgency of the situation, while Claw Weiss and Victor Hale were frozen in fear, unable to move, as the undead creatures continued their brutal attack. And Leon Hatman knew that he had to act fast to save the others, including Ela Voss, and prevent a catastrophe from occurring. Oh no, the situation has taken a dire turn, as the group of unfortunate individuals below have been overrun by the undead, their lives extinguished in an instant, and even their lifeless bodies have been completely devoured by the monstrous creatures, leaving no remaining residue. Meanwhile, in the adjacent building, a young and innocent Leon Hatman witnesses this horrific scene, overcome with fear, bursting into tears on the spot, and his sudden cry is like a sharp sword, immediately piercing the previously silent and dead atmosphere, successfully capturing the attention of the surrounding undead. His mother, Ela Voss, sees this, and her heart burns with anxiety, hastily trying to quiet him down, attempting to keep him silent, but it's too late. The heartbreaking cry has already acted like a magnet, drawing the undead's attention. They stand up, abandoning the nearly devoured skeletal remains, and head towards the source of the sound. Adian Mule knows the adjacent building is on the verge of being overrun, and he quickly assesses the situation, realizing that despite his extraordinary abilities, facing such a massive wave of undead alone would be difficult to withstand for long, and prioritizing the safety of himself and his teammates becomes the top priority. He says, "Allah, hurry up. Let's gather our essential items. We must leave immediately." His voice, firm and resolute, as he turns to speak to Allah in the room. Allah hears this and also becomes frantic. Adian Mule previously purchased 5 grenades from the store system, each costing 500 accumulated points, which pained him for a moment. Just then, Allah suddenly rushes out of the room, urgently saying, "Leon Hatman, Sebastian Falkney, she's awake." Upon hearing this, Leon Hatman's eyes light up, and he thinks of Celeste Beaumont, and then Elias Koenig, who is also nearby, while Gabriel Weiss and Damien Kell are also present, and Claw Weiss, who is with Victo Hale. All of them are on high alert, ready to respond to the new development as they try to escape the desperate situation, with Leon Hatman taking charge, guiding them through the chaos. Sebastian Falkney slowly came to, which also meant they could retreat quickly and more orderly, when suddenly Leon Hatman burst into the room, his face filled with concern, and rushed up to him, asking, "How are you feeling now? Is there anywhere that's uncomfortable?" Just as Sebastian Falkney was trying to suppress his emotions, but ultimately couldn't hold back the overwhelming grief and sadness, and he suddenly threw himself into Leon Hatman's arms, holding him tightly, tears streaming down his face like a broken dam, sobbing uncontrollably. "Oh, my parents. They were all in the car, but were bitten by those terrifying zombies." Sebastian Falkney sobbed silently, each word filled with endless pain and despair. He was just out having dinner with his parents when they encountered the sudden zombie outbreak. The highway was chaotic, with car accidents caused by the zombies. Sebastian Falkney's parents, despite being injured, managed to crawl out of the car and were about to stand up to rescue Sebastian Falkney, but were attacked by the swarming zombies. Sebastian Falkney witnessed his parents being torn apart, infected, and then charging towards him. At that moment, he felt like he was collapsing. Why? Oh, why? Why did it have to be like this? Sebastian Falkney's cries echoed throughout the room, like sharp knives involuntarily piercing Leon Hatman's heart. He could feel Sebastian Falkney's heart-wrenching pain, and his own eyes were welling up with tears. Faced with such a cruel reality, Leon Hatman was at a loss for how to comfort the grief-stricken Sebastian Falkney. "It's okay. You have to live well. Don't let your parents regret it." Meanwhile, Elah Voss, Adian Mule, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Damien Kell, Claw Weiss, and Victo Hale were all silent, watching the scene unfold before them, their faces filled with a mix of sadness and helplessness. As the first zombie crumpled to the ground with a loud crack of breaking bones, Leon Hatman swiftly and precisely sliced through the remaining undead, each swing of his blade sending another zombie crashing down, his movements a blur of speed and accuracy. And just then, Elah Voss, who was trapped in the mangled car, realized her rescuer was Leon Hatman, a glimmer of hope igniting in her eyes as she gazed upon his steadfast figure, a beacon of light in the darkness that had been suffocating her. And before long, Leon Hatman had dispatched the last of the zombies and hastened to the car, grasping the mangled door handle and pulling with all his might. finally managing to yank it open, only to be hit with a pungent smell of blood and burnt metal. But Leon Hatman didn't hesitate, scrambling inside to cut free Ala Voss from her seatbelt, and once she was safe, he swept her into his arms and sped back to the rickety three-wheeled vehicle, where he quickly started the engine and sped away from the treacherous area, leaving the danger behind. And Ella Voss, her voice barely above a whisper, thanked him, her tone laced with a mix of relief and emotion, as she clutched at Leon Hatman's clothes with her blood-stained hands, holding on tightly, still trying to process the ordeal she had just endured, and the heroic actions of her rescuer, Leon Hatman, who had saved her from the jaws of death. And as they sped away, Adrian Mule, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkney, and Damian Kelly were all watching from a distance, while Claw Weiss and Victor Hale were on their way to meet up with them, unaware of the intense scenes that had just unfolded, but grateful that Ella Voss was safe, thanks to Leon Hatman's bravery and quick thinking. Leon Hatman gently stroked Sebastian Falkney's hair, offering soft comfort as Sebastian gradually stopped crying in his arms, looking up at him with tear-filled eyes that shone with a determined glint, realizing that crying wouldn't change anything, only being strong would allow her to survive. For her parents, and for herself, she whispered, "Leon, thank you. I'll be strong. I'll survive. For myself and for my parents." Her voice trembling but resolute, Leon nodded, a hint of admiration in his eyes, knowing that in a post-apocalyptic world, human willpower was stronger than any weapon. He said seriously, "All right, next. We must use all our might and think of every possible way to escape this dangerous Kimhai residential area." Just then, Ala Voss slowly regained consciousness. Still dazed and unaware of the events unfolding before her, Leon quickly and briefly explained the current situation to her and introduced Victor Hale beside her. As she learned of the dire circumstances, a flicker of fear flashed in her eyes. Meanwhile, Adrian Mule, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Damian Kelly, Claw Weiss, and others were nearby, silently observing the scene, their faces filled with concern and determination to survive in this harsh new world. As the emotional storm subsided, Celeste Beaumont knew that in this post-apocalyptic world, filled with danger and challenges, only an unwavering determination and courage to move forward could ensure survival, and she absolutely couldn't become a hindrance or burden to others. So, what should they do next, she asked, taking a deep breath to calm her voice, which was no longer tense and anxious like before. Adrian Mule, witnessing Celeste's swift and effective emotional adjustment, couldn't help but secretly admire her. After a moment's thought, he suggested, "First, let's head up to the rooftop, since the higher ground will give us a broader view, and who knows, we might discover some escape routes or clues." Elias Koenig thought for a moment before speaking. "I've been to that rooftop before, and the buildings aren't connected, but now that the building is filled with zombies, if we have a rope, we can lower it from the back of the building and find a vehicle to escape, as long as we don't get detected by the zombies. Because the alley behind the building is narrow, with only one entrance." Leon Hatman thought for a moment. "Let's do that. We'll head up to the rooftop first, and then the two of you will go down. I have the rope here." After discussing their plan, the three of them, including Adrian Mule, began to prepare. Celeste got out of bed and did some light exercises, feeling a bit weak and malnourished, but otherwise fine, as her internal injuries had been completely healed by the medicine Leon had given her. Just then, a desperate cry for help came from the neighboring building, where several houses had been broken into by zombies. As the desperate cries and pitiful moans persisted, Leon Hatman's expression grew increasingly grim, his face twisting with worry. and with a swift motion, he approached the window, pushing it open without hesitation, and carefully leaned out, his eyes scanning the ground below, straining to see which floor the terrifying undead had reached. But fate seemed to be playing a cruel joke on him, as at that very moment, a menacing zombie head emerged from the neighboring building's window, its gaze locking onto Leon, the distance between them a mere 7 to 8 meters, and in an instant, the air seemed to freeze, the atmosphere becoming unbearably tense. The zombie's senses heightened as it caught the scent of Leon's living breath, its slow movements suddenly becoming ferociously aggressive, its mouth opening wide like a bloody chasm, letting out a thunderous roar, followed by a series of low, ominous growls as it stretched out its blood-drenched, deformed arms, wildly grasping for Leon. But its efforts were in vain due to the distance. And faced with this perilous situation, Leon didn't dare waste a single moment, quickly withdrawing his head, yet the zombie on the other side refused to give up. As if completely enraged, it furiously crawled out of the window, and with a Herculean effort, it hurled itself forward, while Leon's friends, including Ella Voss, Adrian Mule, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkney, Damien Kelly, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale, were still trying to find a way to escape the chaos, unaware of the horror that Leon had just faced. And as the zombies' relentless assault continued, it was clear that their situation was becoming increasingly dire, and they needed to act swiftly to avoid becoming the undead creature's next victims. Leon Hatman leaped forward in an attempt to jump straight into the window where Adrian Mule was standing. Unfortunately, he had overestimated his own abilities, and with a loud thud, the undead creature failed to clear the distance and crashed to the ground, which was the 6th floor. After falling, the undead slowly got up, letting out a fierce growl, and then charged towards the building where Adrian Mule was. The other undead began to follow suit. Come on, we don't have much time left. Seeing the undead starting to climb the stairs, Adrian Mule hastily led the way, opening the door and rushing towards the staircase. Ella Voss followed closely behind, while Sebastian Falkney, despite his unsteady gait, gritted his teeth and kept up with the two. You two, go ahead. I'll hold them off for a bit, Adrian Mule said urgently. Be careful. Adrian Mule, Elias Koenig, and Celeste Beaumont cautioned in unison. Adrian Mule gave the two a reassuring glance and stood at the staircase door, one hand holding a sword and the other a gun, waiting quietly for the horde of undead. The chaotic footsteps grew louder and closer. Tap, 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 tap. The sound of the approaching undead echoed through the hallway. As the undead hordes closed in, their ear-piercing shrieks echoed through the air, each step accompanied by the ominous creaking of the stairs. Leon Hatman grasped his weapon tightly, his eyes fixed and icy, knowing that this battle would determine the fate of his companions. And just then, a grotesque creature emerged into view, its body reeking of putrid decay. And upon closer inspection, it became apparent that this was the same undead that had previously faced Ella Voss, the tattered remnants of its clothing, hinting that it may have been a chef before falling victim to the virus, its chef's coat still clinging to its gaunt frame, now stained with blood. The creature let out a blood-curdling scream, its gaze fixed on Leon Hatman, and with an unsettling intensity, it charged towards him, its jaws agape, revealing jagged teeth, as if eager to tear him apart. Undaunted by the ferocious undead, Leon Hatman let out a low growl. Come on, you detestable beasts. And with lightning speed, he raised his sword, its blade glinting with a cold light, striking down at the creature with a swift and deadly blow. For in this moment, even the slightest mistake could prove disastrous, and the use of firearms was out of the question, lest the loud reports attract even more of these ravenous creatures and unleash a calamity of unimaginable proportions. as Adian Mule, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkny, and Damien Kell watched with bated breath while Claw Weiss and Victor Hale stood ready to provide support, their fate hanging precariously in the balance. Leon Hatman had given the matter considerable thought and decided to utilize his trusty Long Wen Dao to take care of a number of zombies that were approaching. Elah Voss and Adian Mule watching from a distance as he prepared for battle, with Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, and Gabriel Weiss standing ready to provide support if needed, while Sebastian Falkny and Damien Kelly kept a watchful eye on the surroundings. And Claw Weiss and Victor Hale stood guard as Leon Hatman charged forward, his Long Wen Dao flashing with a cold light, its blade razor sharp, capable of slicing through even the hardest steel with ease, making it seem almost excessive to use such a powerful weapon against these zombies. But he knew it was necessary, and with a swift swing of his Dao, he struck down the first zombie, a former chef whose head was severed from its body, which continued to move forward, driven by momentum, until it crashed into a wall and collapsed, leaving a trail of blood and gore in its wake. At which point the system's voice rang out, congratulating Leon Hatman on his successful kill, awarding him 10 points. But this attack had also attracted the attention of more zombies, who were drawn to the fresh blood like wild animals, their frenzy increasing as they closed in. Leon Hatman's eyes grew colder, knowing he couldn't afford to let his guard down for even a moment, and with a fierce determination, he charged forward, his Long Wen Dao slicing through the air, each strike precise and deadly. The system's voice rang out repeatedly as he cut down zombie after zombie. But no matter how many he killed, there seemed to be an endless supply of them, and Leon Hatman couldn't help but think to himself, this is ridiculous. Why are there so many of them? As he continued to fight, taking down over a dozen zombies in quick succession, but still, more kept coming, emerging from the shadows like an unstoppable tide. This led to Leon Hatman being at a loss for words, while Elah Voss and Sebastian Falkny had already reached the top floor. Anxiously waiting and hearing the sounds of killing coming from below, their hearts filled with worry and helplessness, Elah Voss tightly grasped a kitchen knife, ready to handle any unexpected situation, and Sebastian Falkny held a dagger, trying to suppress the fear in her heart and making an effort to remain calm. She knew that panicking now would only add to Adian Mule's burden. Those two must have reached the rooftop by now. Darn it, time to fall back. Adian Mule, after killing over 30 of the undead, had also expended a lot of energy and began to prepare to fall back. Two of the undead simultaneously charged towards Adian Mule. About to bite and tear him apart, Adian Mule quickly sheathed his Long Wen Dao and then swiftly raised his eagle pistol. With 2 crisp shots, the bullets precisely pierced the heads of the undead, which fell to the stairs, completely lifeless. The sound of the shots had indeed attracted more undead. Adian Mule fired while retreating. Ha ha! Let's give you all something delicious to eat. After using up all the ammunition in the clip, Adian Mule didn't hurry to reload. Instead, he took 2 grenades from his belt. As Leon Hatman fearlessly pulled the pin and hurled the grenade, a blast of fiery flames tore through the darkness of the stairs, immediately followed by a deafening explosion that sent the stairs crumbling down, engulfing the horde of undead in a chaotic mess of dust and debris, with Adian Mule's voice ringing out in congratulations, noting that Leon had successfully eliminated 22 undead, earning him 220 accumulated points, although at the cost of 2 grenades worth 1,000 points, which had only managed to take out 22 undead. Leon had cleverly used the explosion as cover to sprint up the stairs, his speed so remarkable that he was able to clear the blast radius in an instant, taking advantage of the distraction to make a dash for the rooftop, Well aware that time was of the essence and that he needed to reunite with Ella Voss and Sebastian Falkny as quickly as possible, and just as he burst out of the stairway like an arrow shot from a bow, two familiar figures, Ayla and Sebastian, appeared before him. Their worried expressions instantly replaced with relief as they locked eyes with Leon, the trio exchanging a brief, resolute glance that spoke volumes. Their understanding and coordination instantaneous as they swiftly set off together towards the rooftop where the chill of the wind was starting to pick up, carrying a refreshing, liberating energy. And without hesitation, Leon swiftly retrieved a meticulously prepared climbing rope and tossed it to Allah and Sebastian as they prepared to take their next move, with Gabriel Weiss, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Damian Kelly, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale waiting in the wings, ready to join the fray. As Leon Hatman recalled, the rope was actually a spoil of war that he had conveniently stashed in his spatial ring during the supermarket raid. And now Ella Voss and Sebastian Falkny quickly grabbed it, swiftly securing it to a sturdy anchor point on the rooftop, their entire process unfolding seamlessly, while Adian Mule kept a watchful eye on the stairway, ever vigilant and wary of those ghastly undead creatures suddenly rushing in to cause trouble. And when Adian Mule was summoned, he hastened to inspect the rope's stability before urging Ella Voss and Sebastian Falkny to climb down, his eyes filled with determination and encouragement. And as they exchanged a glance and nodded, they began their descent, their movements somewhat tense but remarkably steady. And as Eddie and Mule watched them disappear from view, he felt a hint of relief, taking a deep breath, confirming that no undead were approaching, before swiftly turning around, grasping the rope, and following Ella Voss and Sebastian Falkny down. And when he finally set foot on solid ground, Adian Mule let out a sigh of relief, glancing back at the building swarmed by the undead, feeling fortunate. And although Ella Voss and Sebastian Falkny had scraped their hands during the climb, they endured the pain in silence, waiting for Adian Mule's next instructions, and then he led them on, saying, "Let's go. We're not out of danger yet. We need to find a safe haven first." And nearby, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Damian Kell, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale were all waiting, ready to move forward, and with Adian Mule at the lead. The group began to tread carefully through the desolate landscape, ever mindful of the lurking dangers, their footsteps quiet and cautious, as they endeavored to find a secure refuge. And with each step, they drew closer to their goal, their hearts filled with a mix of hope and trepidation, uncertain of what lay ahead, but resolute in their determination to survive. Leon Hatman said with a tone that was both gentle and cautious. His voice trembled slightly as he proposed the idea to Ella Voss, who looked at him with a mixture of surprise and suspicion, her eyes wide with unease. Leon Hatman quickly nodded and held up a bag of supplies in his hand to show his sincerity, ensuring her that all they needed was a safe place to rest, as his friend, Celeste Beaumont, was severely injured and in dire need of medical attention. His words exuded a sense of determination and urgent appeal. After a brief but tense exchange, Ella Voss finally agreed to let Leon Hatman and Adian Mule into a room in her house to take temporary refuge. Leon Hatman carefully picked up Adian Mule and stored his three-wheeled vehicle in a spatial ring, then carried Adian Mule upstairs. They walked through the dark corridor, heading straight to the floor where Ella Voss was. Her name was actually Ella Voss, and this room was a dormitory for company employees. She had stayed home from work today due to illness, but unexpectedly escaped a disaster. When she felt a bit better, she was about to order takeout, but suddenly saw many reminder messages on her phone. These messages were all warnings not to go out. Ella Voss was skeptical, but opened the latest news, only to discover that during her sleep, the world had broken out in a zombie crisis. Although it was a company dormitory, the food in the dormitory was really scarce. Meanwhile, other characters like Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkny, Damian Kelly, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale were not present in this scene, but their presence would be crucial in the upcoming events, as Leon Hatman and Adrian Mula tried to find a way to survive in this new and terrifying world, alongside Ela Voss, who was still trying to come to terms with the new reality. Leon Hatman didn't hesitate, turning the key and starting the engine. The vehicle roared to life like a ferocious beast awakened from a deep slumber, its tires screeching in protest as they gripped the ground, emitting a deafening sound that sent shivers down the spine, as if the very fabric of space was being torn apart. With Ela Voss and Adrian Mula holding on tight, Leon Hatman shouted at the top of his lungs, his voice piercing the air as he floored it. The vehicle surging forward with incredible speed, everyone on board understood that their only hope for survival lay in escaping the area as quickly as possible. But just as they thought they were making progress, dozens of grotesque zombies emerged from the distance, their faces twisted in a snarl, baring their teeth, letting out low, menacing growls. These undead creatures charged towards the vehicle with reckless abandon, attempting to block its path. Undaunted by the danger, Leon Hatman gripped the steering wheel firmly, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. Resolute and determined, he accelerated further, plowing the vehicle straight into the zombies. In an instant, blood and flesh flew everywhere, limbs torn asunder. The zombies, once a formidable force, were now reduced to a pathetic, scattered mess. With a loud crash, Leon Hatman navigated the vehicle through the chaos. Following Victor Hale's guidance, they finally spotted the exit. Without hesitation, Leon Hatman floored it, smashing through the barricades of the Kimhai residential area and breaking out into the open. As they sped away, the sounds of the zombies' growls and pursuit gradually faded into the distance, eventually disappearing altogether, with Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkny, Damian Kelly, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale all holding on for dear life. They had managed to escape the clutches of the undead hordes, at least for the time being. Leon Hatman glanced in the rearview mirror, seeing the desolate road behind, and couldn't help but feel a sense of relief at their narrow escape. Thinking to himself that they had truly escaped, and Sebastian Falkny, unable to contain his excitement, loudly exclaimed, his beautiful eyes reddening as tears streamed down his face, as if they could fall at any moment, and Adrian Mule, with a serious expression, nodded in agreement, his tone still laced with a sense of foreboding, reminding them that in this new world, where the once bustling streets were now filled with the undead, they had to be constantly on guard. And Ela Voss, sitting beside him, gently patted his hand in an attempt to comfort him, still trying to process the fact that just 2 days had passed since the apocalypse, and the city was already unrecognizable. The once bustling streets, now a desolate and eerie landscape, with only a few stray undead wandering aimlessly, their low, raspy growls sending shivers down the spines of Leon Hatman and his companions. As they navigated the blood-stained streets, the once pristine roads now marred by the remnants of chaos, with shattered glass and overturned cars littering the landscape, and Victor Hale's eyes widened as he took in the destruction. The commercial streets, once filled with life and energy, now lay in ruins, with crumbling buildings and debris-filled streets, and the wind blew through the broken store windows, rustling the few remaining garments that hung limply, as if a grim reminder of what once was. And Gabriel Weiss's eyes met those of Celeste Beaumont, who looked on in horror at the devastation. The cars that lined the streets, some of which had crashed into each other, their twisted metal and shattered glass a testament to the chaos that had ensued. and Damien Kella's voice was barely above a whisper as he spoke, his eyes fixed on the apocalyptic landscape before them. And Claw Weiss's eyes welled up with tears as she took in the desolate scene. The world they once knew, now gone, replaced by a harsh and unforgiving reality, and Elias Koenig's grip on the steering wheel tightened, his knuckles white with tension as he navigated the treacherous roads, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of danger, ever vigilant, as they journeyed through the unknown, with Leon Hatman's words still echoing in their minds. A reminder that in this new world, they had to be constantly on guard, for in this world, only the strongest would survive. As Leon Hatman grasped the wheel tightly, his eyes ablaze like burning torches, he carefully navigated the rugged terrain of the devastated city, his wariness escalating with each step forward, for no one could predict the dangers that might suddenly emerge. And when Sebastian Falkny turned his gaze outside the window, his eyes scanning the utterly disfigured cityscape, he anxiously inquired, "Where to next?" To which Leon Hatman pondered for a moment before responding in a calm tone. "Let's head out of this city. I have a place on the outskirts where we can temporarily take refuge. My sister also lives there." And the two girls, Ella Voss and Claw Weiss, nodded in agreement, for Leon Hatman had become their emotional pillar, and whatever he said went. During their journey, Leon Hatman encountered numerous heartbreaking scenes, with pitiful people being relentlessly pursued by the undead, some risking their lives to flee, their faces etched with horror and despair, while others were trapped in narrow vehicles or sealed buildings, gazing out of windows in desperate hopes of rescue, their eyes filled with longing to survive and fear of death. And whenever these people spotted Leon Hatman driving by in his rugged vehicle, they would beseech him for help as if he were their last lifeline. And Leon Hatman, with his companions, Adrian Moulet, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, and Damien Kell, and Victor Hale, had to navigate through this treacherous landscape, with the shattered glass and debris resembling sharp blades, seeming to recount the brutality and unpredictability of the apocalypse. And as they journeyed on, they remained vigilant, aware that the next moment could bring unforeseen perils, all while searching for a safe haven and a glimmer of hope in a world that had been turned upside down. Leon Hatman remained unmoved by the desperate pleas, as he knew he wasn't a savior and had no obligation or ability to risk his own safety to rescue these strangers. And in this harsh world, everyone had to fend for themselves to survive, which was a principle Leon understood, so he chose to continue on, leaving the cries for help behind, even though he knew this might spark resentment in some. But he also knew that giving in to a moment of weakness would not only fail to save others, but also put his own life in jeopardy. And as time passed, the night began to fall, and Leon was driving his sturdy off-road vehicle down the road, trying to escape the city. However, as they got closer to the outskirts, Leon was shocked to discover that the road ahead was completely blocked by countless other vehicles, with no space to move forward. These vehicles belonged to people who had tried to flee the city after the outbreak, but unfortunately, fate had not been kind to them, and their efforts had been in vain, with some getting infected and others abandoning their cars. Leon told the others, "Absolutely do not get out of the car. Wait for me inside. I'll go check ahead." And with that, he quickly released his seatbelt, opened the door, and carefully got out, approaching the blockade to investigate. As he got closer, he was shocked by what he saw. It wasn't just a traffic jam, but a severe car accident, with 10 vehicles colliding violently, resulting in a chaotic mess, with shattered glass and deformed car parts scattered everywhere. And what was even more frightening was the presence of large bloodstains on the ground, a grim testament to the severity of the accident. Allah Voss, Adian Mule, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkny, Damien Kelly, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale were all waiting anxiously in the car, unaware of the horrific scene unfolding before Leon's eyes. As Leon Hatman gazed out at the road, he couldn't help but feel a sense of hopelessness wash over him. His face twisted into a mixture of frustration and despair, a bitter smile spreading across his lips, and he let out a deep sigh, shaking his head in defeat. The weight of their situation settling in, he turned back to the car and began to fill in Elah Voss and Sebastian Falkny on the details of their predicament. The three of them instantly reaching for their phones to pull up the city's digital map, scouring it carefully in search of an alternative route out of the city. But just as they thought they'd found a moment of calm, two mysterious figures emerged from the darkness, their silent approach belied by an unnerving aura. And Leon Hatman, no ordinary individual, his senses heightened since he developed his sixth sense, picked up on the presence, his exceptionally keen hearing detecting the faintest of sounds, and he sensed something was off, a feeling he couldn't quite put into words, but it set his internal alarm bells ringing. Without hesitation, he swiftly flung open the car door, his movements swift and decisive, as he drew the eagle gun from his spatial ring and trained it on the figures, his voice booming through the night air. "Who's there? Come out, or you'll face the bullet. You'll be the one to blame," he warned, his eyes blazing with intensity. And the two dark figures, seemingly taken aback, halted in their tracks, their advance momentarily stalled, as if frozen by Leon Hatman's fierce words. And for a moment, the only sound was the heavy silence that hung in the air, punctuated by the soft hum of the car's engine, as the three occupants waited with bated breath to see what would happen next, their eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the reach of the car's headlights, where the two mysterious figures still lurked, their intentions unknown, as Adian Mule, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Damien Kelly, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale all remained silent, watching the scene unfold with a mix of trepidation and anticipation, their faces set with determination, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Leon Hatman narrowed his eyes, trying to see through the darkness to make out everything. And at this moment, two figures stepped out of the darkness, their hands raised, seemingly harmless. One of them cried out, carrying a hint of desperation and a faint plea. "Don't shoot! We're human!" Leon Hatman's tense nerves didn't ease up. He didn't lower his gun, but remained vigilant. "Who are you? Why are you here?" he asked coldly. The two figures slowly walked towards the faint light from the car. Leon Hatman looked at their faces. A young couple, disheveled and worn out, with exhaustion and fear etched on their faces. "We came to the city for a trip, and we're planning to leave the city to find a safe place, but didn't expect." The man stopped, pointing to the congested road ahead. "There was a traffic accident and we were surrounded by. We spent a lot of effort to escape to a nearby mountain. Our food and water are almost running out, and we just saw your car approaching, so we came to see if we could get some help." Leon Hatman listened, looking at Alea Voss and Sebastian Falkny in the car. After a moment of silence, he made a decision. "Where do you want to go?" "We're leaving the city. Where are you headed?" The woman replied, "We're going to the city. Unfortunately, it seems we're not headed in the same direction." "Sorry," Leon Hatman said. Adian Mule, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, and Gabriel Weiss all remained silent, observing the situation, while Claw Weiss and Victor Hale were watching from a distance. Damien Kelly stood by as the scene unfolded. With Leon Hatman's decision, the two strangers were left with no choice but to accept their fate and part ways. As Leon Hatman finished speaking, he prepared to get into the vehicle, his eyes flashing with a hint of malice, but it was quickly concealed, and he swiftly continued. Now that all the roads out of the city are blocked, I know there are other routes. You just need to get me out of the city. Can you do that? Adion Mule and Celeste Beaumont exchanged a tense glance. The atmosphere momentarily froze. Elias Koenig and Gabriel Weiss also watched the scene with bated breath. Leon Hatman furrowed his brow. Quickly weighing the pros and cons in his mind, he knew that in this post-apocalyptic world, trust and betrayal often hung in the balance of a single thought. Okay, but you must ensure you won't cause any trouble for us. Just get us out of the city and get off the vehicle. After much hesitation, Leon Hatman finally relented. Agreeing to their proposal, he carefully put the black gun away in his bag, then slightly tilted his head, his sharp eyes signaling the young couple to quickly get into the vehicle. The young couple, overjoyed and grateful to have escaped death, hastily nodded in agreement. The young woman swiftly got into the back seat, sitting obediently beside Ala Voss and Sebastian Falkny, while the young man also quickly took the front passenger seat. Thank you so much. If we hadn't met you, we really wouldn't have known what to do. The young man was overjoyed, just about to continue expressing his gratitude. But before he could finish, Damien Kelly casually tossed him a few ropes. Hey, just tie up your hands and feet. Don't talk too much. The young man, Claw Weiss, looked at the ropes in his hand with a puzzled expression. Obediently binding his wrists and ankles, Victor Hale watched the scene unfold with interest. As Leon Hatman's eyes gleamed with a calculating intensity, now that they had the upper hand, they would have to wait and see how things would play out. With Leon Hatman at the helm, the vehicle began to move, slowly navigating through the desolate landscape. The air was thick with tension as the group of survivors embarked on a perilous journey, with unknown dangers lurking around every corner, and the lines between trust and betrayal continually blurred. Leon Hatman's face was expressionless, his tone icy, leaving no room for negotiation, as he warned Adian Muley and Ala Voss to get down from the vehicle immediately if they didn't want to get hurt, his voice firm and unyielding, and Adian Mula's face turned pale in an instant. He looked up at Leon Hatman, a glimmer of doubt and fear flashing in his eyes, but he still slowly nodded, beginning to follow Leon Hatman's instructions, binding his own hands and feet. And Ala Voss, although reluctantly, also quietly complied, knowing that in this perilous world, survival was paramount. And Leon Hatman, seeing this, still wary, but slightly relieved, sat back down in the driver's seat, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, preparing to follow the route that Adian Muley and Ella Voss had provided, searching for a way out of the city. As night deepened, the only sounds being the occasional rumble of the engine and the faint hum of the car, Leon Hatman gripped the steering wheel tightly, driving with utmost concentration, fearing that even the slightest mistake could put the three of them in danger. Adian Muley and Ala Voss had introduced themselves, and Leon Hatman couldn't help but wonder if the road they spoke of could really avoid the hordes of undead. And Celeste Beaumont, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke up, her voice laced with a hint of uncertainty, asking if they were certain that the road would be safe. And Ala Voss replied, her voice low, but trying to sound convincing, that they had observed the area for a long time, and the road was relatively deserted, so the number of undead should be minimal. Leon Hatman didn't say much, he just silently nodded and continued driving forward. He knew that in this post-apocalyptic era, every decision could be related to survival so he had to be even more careful. After a winding mountain road, they finally arrived at the small road that the middle-aged couple had mentioned. The road was lined with wild grass and was very desolate. But as they said, there were indeed not many signs of Tang Thi. Leon Hatman was tense. His nerves were slightly relaxed, but he still maintained a high level of vigilance, carefully driving the car forward. As time passed, the city scenery gradually disappeared, replaced by a vast wilderness and sparse trees. Leon Hatman knew they were getting close to their destination. He spoke softly, his tone barely hiding a hint of fatigue. Driving all night. He was indeed a bit tired. Sebastian Falcone and Victor Hale heard this and both smiled. It had been a while since they saw each other smile. They knew this road was full of difficulties and dangers, but as long as Leon Hatman was here, they would have the confidence to overcome all obstacles. Finally, at the moment when dawn broke, they had driven out of the city to a relatively safe suburban area. This was an abandoned factory complex, basically uninhabited, with not many Tang Thi. Leon Hatman stopped the car, took off the handcuffs from Adian Mule and Allah Voss, and coldly said, "You two can go now. Remember, the road ahead, you have to walk by yourselves. Thank you, thank you." Damien Kalle and Claw Weiss also bid farewell to Leon Hatman, while Gabriel Weiss and Elias Koenig helped Celeste Beaumont out of the car. They all expressed their gratitude to Leon Hatman, who had helped them escape from the dangerous city. Now they had to continue on their own and face the unknown dangers ahead. With a mixture of excitement and fear, they set off towards their new destination. While Leon Hatman watched them leave, his expression was calm and collected, but deep down, he was worried about their safety and the dangers that lay ahead. He knew that in this new world, only the strongest could survive, and he hoped that they would be able to overcome all the challenges and make it to their destinations safely. As Leon Hatman turned to leave, a sudden and unexpected turn of events unfolded, with a dagger emerging from Allah Voss's sleeve, thrusting menacingly towards Leon, prompting Sebastian Falcone and Victor Hale to shout warnings, cautioning Leon to be careful. And with his quick reflexes, Leon sidestepped the attack, effortlessly avoiding the potentially lethal blow, his eyes instantly turning icy cold as he grasped Ayla's wrist, twisting it until the dagger fell to the ground, saying in a glacial tone that he had never trusted strangers, and with a swift motion, he hurled Allah across the distance, sending him crashing to the ground. Too pained to rise for some time, Celeste Beaumont's face turned ashen, shocked by the sudden turn of events, and though she attempted to speak, to explain something, she found herself at a loss for words, helpless to do anything but gaze at Leon with eyes filled with pleading and regret. As Adian Mule and Elias Koenig quickly exited the vehicle, each brandishing their own weapons, rapidly subduing Celeste, who stood frozen in a daze, with Adian urging that she be kept under close guard, while Damien Kalle, Claw Weiss, and Gabriel Weiss watched the scene unfold, their expressions a mix of shock and concern as the situation continued to escalate, with Victor and Sebastian maintaining a firm grip on Celeste, ensuring she could not escape, and Leon standing tall, his eyes fixed intently on the scene before him, his expression unyielding. Leon Hatman gave orders to Sebastian Falcone and Victor Hale, then pulled out the pistol holstered at his waist, taking firm and powerful steps towards the culprit, coldly interrogating. "It's really hard to understand. I've been kind enough to let you hitch a ride. Why are you trying to harm me?" At this time, the culprit's face was twisted in a ferocious and terrifying expression, shouting hoarsely, "There's no reason. I just wanted this car of yours. If I kill all of you, the car will naturally be mine." Hearing these words, Leon Hatman couldn't help but shake his head in frustration, thinking to himself, is this kid really mentally unstable? It's absurd to the extreme. Just because you're greedy, we have to let you have your way? Things have come to this point, and you dare to take action, then don't expect me to be lenient. I'll send you on your way. After saying this, Leon Hatman didn't hesitate to raise his gun, the black muzzle pointing directly at the culprit. Ayla Voss stood by in shock. Looking at the scene, she didn't expect the culprit to be so extreme, and she didn't expect Leon Hatman to be so strong. Ayla Voss quickly knelt down, begging, "Leon Hatman, please don't harm him. We're also being coerced." Leon Hatman let out a cold laugh, looking at Ayla Voss with complex eyes. "Coerced? So your lives are more valuable than ours?" Although he didn't directly take action, his aura had already made the atmosphere inside and outside the car freezing cold. The culprit was the son of the city's leader. Leon Hatman absolutely couldn't harm him. He was the only precious child in the family. If something unexpected happened, the consequences would be unimaginable. His powerful and wealthy father would definitely not let it go, and would use all his might to find the culprit and take revenge. Leon Hatman would become the target of all the attacks, falling into an abyss of endless suffering. Ayla Voss was worried to the point of shouting loudly, trying to prevent the dangerous situation from escalating. The culprit was a notorious young master, growing up in luxury, being pampered and cared for, gradually forming an arrogant and domineering personality, looking down on everyone. Adian Mula, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, and Damien Kella were all shocked by the situation, while Claw Weiss and Victor Hale stood firm, ready to follow Leon Hatman's orders. The atmosphere was tense, waiting for Leon Hatman's next move. As Leon Hatman and his companions, Ayla Voss and Adian Mule, stood together, their trust levels had reached an all-time high, with both of them essentially pledging not to betray each other. Leon's face lit up with a sense of satisfaction, knowing that in this post-apocalyptic world, finding trustworthy allies was a daunting task, and the rewards for accumulating trust were generous, including 100 bottles of purified water, 100 pounds of rice, 50 pounds of beef, and a variety of vegetables. And upon reaching a trust level of over 200, they were granted 10 grenades, 300 bullets, and a revolver with an infinite ammo magazine, which excited Leon, who couldn't contain his enthusiasm, as these rewards were a significant boost to their survival chances. The infinite ammo magazine, in particular, was a game changer, allowing them to shoot continuously without needing to reload, a luxury they hadn't been able to afford before, having spent 300 points in the system store to purchase only 3 replacement magazines. And now, the system was generously bestowing such an incredible gift upon them, filling Leon's heart with joy and satisfaction. As if he had already envisioned their future conquests, he stood up, patted the girl's shoulders, his eyes shining with sincerity and gratitude, and said, "Welcome. From now on, we're a family. I'll do my best to protect you. Let's work together to build a new life in our base." With Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falcone, Damien Kelly, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale, all ready to start their new journey, filled with hope and determination, as they embarked on this new chapter in their lives, with Leon at the helm, guiding them towards a brighter future. Leon Hatman began to introduce the details of the base, including his own spatial ring, while choosing to keep the system a secret, as one should have some small secrets to themselves. And it was truly unbelievable that he had obtained something so powerful, leaving Ayla Voss in awe with a hint of regret, as she recalled how Leon had reminded her earlier to stock up on food, but unfortunately, her parents had taken her shopping that day, and in her excitement, she had forgotten Leon's warning. which ultimately led to her parents being involved in a car accident and infected by the undead, prompting Leon to comfort her, saying, "Let bygones be bygones. You must live well, and when we get back to the base, I'll introduce you to everything in detail." To which Ela nodded vigorously, while Adian Muli listened intently, his eyes occasionally gleaming with a longing for a safe haven. And as the warm afternoon sunlight streaming through the broken window of the abandoned factory brought a sense of coziness to the gloomy space, Leon's expression suddenly turned serious as he heard the chaotic footsteps outside, which belonged to more than one person and were followed by a large number of undead, causing Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkney, Damien Kelly, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale to fall silent, awaiting Leon's next move. As the situation unfolded, with Leon's spatial ring and the base's secrets hanging in the balance, and the group's fate uncertain, amidst the ominous presence of the undead and the unknown individuals outside. As they faced the approaching threat, Leon Hatman quickly spoke up, reminding everyone to be prepared to leave. And shortly after, 3 people stood up, ready to depart, just as 6 figures appeared outside, consisting of 2 couples, with Adian Mule and his companion, along with Elias Koenig and his partner, Celeste Beaumont, and Gabriel Weiss and his companion, Claw Weiss, and Sebastian Falkney, who was struggling to keep up, turned to the others, saying he couldn't run anymore, his face pale and sweaty, as if he could collapse at any moment, having endured a long and arduous journey, with Damien Kell and Victor Hale also present, and Adian Mule, trying to boost morale, firmly told Sebastian Falconet to keep going, urging him to persevere, emphasizing that giving up was not an option, and that they just needed to hold on for a little while longer to find a safe haven. And as he finished speaking, he patted Sebastian Falconer's shoulder, assuring him that he would always be by his side, while the others, including Alavos, were also exhausted, breathing heavily, with fatigue etched on their faces. Yet, in the face of adversity, they all gritted their teeth, silently enduring the extreme physical strain, with Leon Hatman and the others, ready to face whatever lay ahead. As they let their guard down for just a moment, the undead behind them would surely devour them. And at that exact moment, Leon Hatman's wife suddenly pointed excitedly to a distant location, and Adi and Mule looked over to see what seemed to be an abandoned factory in the distance, which sparked a glimmer of hope. And as they gazed out into the distance, they indeed saw a dilapidated structure standing tall, its ominous appearance notwithstanding. It was undoubtedly a lifeline for the desperate group, so without hesitation, they hastened their pace towards the abandoned factory. Meanwhile, Ela Voss, who was inside, heard the footsteps outside and prepared to leave with Sebastian Falkney and Victor Hale. And as the creaky door slowly opened, they were met with an unexpected sight, for at that precise moment, they bumped into 4 people outside the door, and Elias Koenig, with a worried expression, shouted to Leon Hatman, urging him to be cautious, warning him of the hordes of terrifying undead behind them, and not to rush outside lest they seal their own fate. And as Leon Hatman faced this unexpected situation, he couldn't help but feel a sense of despair. For initially, he had meticulously planned their escape, intending to flee the factory and summon a high-performance vehicle from his spatial ring to drive to safety. But who could have anticipated that the group would arrive so swiftly, not only encountering them but also blocking their path? And now, the vicious undead, their faces distorted in a horrific grimace, were closing in, their distance dwindling. And as the situation grew increasingly perilous, Leon Hatman exchanged a resolute glance with Sebastian Falkney and Victor Hale, and Gabriel Weiss, Celeste Beaumont, and Claw Weiss, who were accompanied by Damien Kell, all found themselves in a precarious predicament, with the ravenous undead horde drawing near, and their escape route blocked by the newly arrived group, and it seemed that their fate hung in the balance, as they struggled to survive in a desperate bid to stay alive. Leon Hatman and Ella Voss quickly retreated into the factory, followed by Adrian Müller, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, and Sebastian Falkny, who all swiftly moved inside, and then together they managed to close the heavy door, accompanied by a loud thud, which seemed to completely isolate the danger outside, as the fierce zombies crashed into the door, growling and snarling, but the factory door was solid enough to withstand them, and after a while, the zombies were unable to break through, causing Leon and the others to breathe a sigh of relief, with one of the men, seemingly exhausted, saying, I'm so tired," as he wiped the sweat from his face and caught his breath, then took off his heavy backpack and collapsed to the ground, panting, at which point Damien Kella spoke up, saying, "Brothers, considering our current situation, I think we should work together and help each other get through this difficult time." And then he introduced himself, saying, "My name is Damien Kelle. This is my wife, Claw Weiss. And that man over there is Victor Hale. And the woman next to him is his wife." After which he pointed to each person, introducing them in detail to Leon Hatman, who nodded slightly, indicating he understood, and then responded in a calm tone, "Yes, I know. My name is Leon Hatman, and those two over there are Adrian Muli and Celeste Beaumont." Meanwhile, the others, including Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, and Sebastian Falkny, were all accounted for, as they stood together, united in their effort to survive. After exchanging a few simple words, Leon Hatman fell silent, and it seemed that both parties had officially greeted each other and become acquainted. However, Ella Voss remained cautious, not trusting anyone she didn't know, as, in this post-apocalyptic world, people's intentions were even harder to predict than those of the undead. She glanced at the four individuals, trying to catch a glimpse of any hidden agenda or weakness in their expressions. But all four of them looked exhausted, their eyes filled with the luck of surviving the disaster and the uncertainty of the future, not seeming to be pretending. Meanwhile, Adrian Muller's gaze accidentally swept across a corner, and he suddenly seemed to have discovered a treasure, his eyes shining brightly. On that day, after simply freshening up, Elias Koenig hastily left the hotel because he had an important matter to attend to, which was picking up his dog from the animal hospital. When he mentioned this, Celeste Beaumont's face turned pale. She stood up abruptly, her eyes revealing uncontrollable anger and disgust. She gritted her teeth, saying, "Are you mocking me? Or do you think everyone will give up their dignity and boundaries just to survive?" Gabriel Weiss saw this, and his face turned pale. He hadn't expected Celeste Beaumont's reaction to be so intense. He wanted to explain, but the words got stuck in his throat. The atmosphere around them seemed to freeze. Even their breathing became heavy. At this moment, Victor Hale stepped forward. He had also heard what Gabriel Weiss had said. Victor Hale looked at Gabriel Weiss coldly, his tone firm and unmistakable. Sebastian Falkny and Damien Kelly exchanged a glance, while Clay Weiss stood quietly, observing the situation. And it seemed that the conversation between Leon Hatman and Ella Voss had come to an abrupt end, as they both turned to look at the others, waiting to see how the situation would unfold, with Elias Koenig's eyes fixed on Celeste Beaumont, and Adrian Muller's gaze still shining with excitement. The tension in the air was palpable, as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting for the next move. And amidst this heavy atmosphere, it seemed that anything could happen. as the group stood there, unsure of what the future held, but certain that their lives would never be the same again. Leon Hatman, please respect everyone. Your request is unacceptable, and we hope you won't have such thoughts again. Leon Hatman's face turned red with anger, as if a flame was burning on his cheek. His ears were reddening, and he felt embarrassed. His inner thoughts were in turmoil, like a stormy sea with various thoughts intertwining. He wondered if Ela Voss didn't like his wife. This thought lingered in his mind, so he stubbornly said, "Maybe I'll let my wife spend a night with you to keep you company." But before he could finish, Adian Mula furiously growled. The sound was like thunder in Leon Hatman's ears. He was so scared that he swallowed his words. Adian Mule was baffled. Why was there such a foolish person? Did he think with his lower body? Leon Hatman knew it was useless to stay, so he reluctantly walked away towards Elias Koenig. Meanwhile, Sebastian Falkny approached Adian Mule, teasing him. "Are you very disappointed? You can't change your common-law wife." Adian Mule sternly replied, "How dare you? I, Adian Mule, am a respectable and righteous person." Celeste Beaumont looked at Adian Mule's serious face and couldn't help but curve her lips into a smile. A glint of laughter sparkled in her eyes. She gently patted Adian Mule's shoulder, smiling and saying, "Of course, I know you're a straightforward person." Gabriel Weiss and Claw Weiss were watching from the side. Victor Hale was also observing the scene, while Damien Kella stood quietly, and Leon Hatman had already retreated. The atmosphere was filled with tension, but Celeste Beaumont's gentle words eased the situation. Ela Voss and Adian Mule seemed to have reached a mutual understanding, and the confrontation began to dissipate. Leon Hatman sat down on the ground with a gentlemanly demeanor, creating a comfortable and lively atmosphere with the others. While on the other side, an unpleasant situation was unfolding, as Adian Mule's face turned red with anger, and he stormed off to where Ela Voss was, lying down and starting to doze off, still visibly upset, and it was then that Elias Koenig and Gabriel Weiss, who had been watching from afar, approached Adian Mule, with Elias Koenig bluntly asking, "What did you say to Leon Hatman to make him so angry? Can't you control yourself?" To which Adian Mule responded in an annoyed tone, his voice laced with frustration and discontent, as he rolled over, turning his back to Elias Koenig, closing his eyes, as if trying to shut out the inquiry and criticism. Elias Koenig, seeing this, frowned, feeling a deep sense of helplessness and disappointment. Knowing Adian Mule's selfish nature and lack of regard for others' emotions, yet, as his cousin, he felt obliged to repeatedly try to reason with him, warning him, "I'm telling you, you need to behave here. Don't let your bad thoughts get the better of you. We're in a post-apocalyptic world now. There's no law to save you." Elias Koenig continued to scold. Adian Mule, hearing this, felt a surge of anger, quickly getting up, cursing, "My parents are already dead. What business is it of yours? Why are you controlling me?" Sebastian Falkny tried to intervene, pulling Adian Mule back, saying, "Stop talking, just leave, don't bother me." But Adian Mule's anger had already taken over. No one could calm him down. He shoved Sebastian Falkny aside, confronting Elias Koenig, who, looking at his cousin, felt a deep sorrow, a mix of sadness and frustration, as he saw the person he once knew, now so consumed by anger and hatred. Meanwhile, Damien Kelly, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale watched the scene unfold, their faces filled with concern and worry. As the atmosphere grew increasingly tense, Celeste Beaumont tried to step in, but it seemed like the situation was spiraling out of control. Leon Hatman's eyes widened in horror as he realized the devastating consequences of the disaster, where the darker aspects of human nature were magnified, and even the bonds of blood ties became fragile and easily broken. And so Allah Voss's gentle voice echoed in his mind, urging him to stay calm, as they were each other's only support, and if they lost trust and support for one another, who could they turn to? Food could be replenished, but once people's hearts were lost, they would never return. Her words were like a gentle yet powerful hammer, striking at the confusion and anger within Leon Hatman's heart. His eyes blazed like fire, each breath heavy and urgent, like a trapped beast struggling to break free. And so Adian Mule rushed to his side, placing a soothing hand on his back, speaking in a gentle tone, like a spring breeze, reassuring him they were family and should help each other, share their burdens. And Celeste Beaumont's calm demeanor was a stark contrast to Leon Hatman's fury. But he was unforgiving, his voice rising in anger like a lion provoked, telling Adian Mule to leave, that he couldn't stand the sight of him, and how dare he take Elias Koenig's side. Didn't he know what they were secretly doing? The outburst left Adian Mule and Elias Koenig's faces pale, and Leon Hatman's tirade continued. Furious at their audacity, and Gabriel Weiss tried to intervene, scolding Leon Hatman for speaking out of line, but he wouldn't be swayed, recalling a night when he was drunk, and Adian Mule had taken him home, and Claw Weiss and Victor Hale watched in dismay as the argument escalated, with Sebastian Faulkner and Damien Kella looking on, concerned as the situation spiraled out of control, and Leon Hatman's anger boiled over, refusing to be placated, his heart still seething with resentment, and the tension between them was palpable, as the weight of their emotions hung in the air like a challenge, waiting to be addressed. And it seemed that only time would tell if they could find a way to heal and move forward, or if the wounds of the past would continue to haunt them. Leon Hatman's words cut like a sharp knife, severing the fragile bond of friendship. And Allah Voss's face turned from pale to green as she struggled to respond, her lips trembling in an attempt to defend herself. But she couldn't find the right words, while Adian Mule's face grew even more flushed with shame, recalling the night he had indeed drunk too much and made a mistake, and Celeste Beaumont, his wife, slapped him upon hearing the story, her anger and humiliation palpable. And Adian Mule's voice was hoarse, each word painstakingly squeezed out, the atmosphere around them frozen and tense, heavy with unspoken emotions. And when Leon Hatman finished speaking, his rage was like a wildfire burning out of control, consuming the last shreds of reason, his eyes blazing with fury, as he abruptly stood up, towering over the others, and declared, from now on, they would go their separate ways, no longer bothering each other. But just as he turned to leave, Allah Voss grasped his arm, pleading with him to calm down, her voice choked with tears, begging him not to let his anger get the better of him, and Leon Hatman roughly shook her off, growling, "Let me go, you deceitful person," as Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Faulkner, Damien Kelle, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale watched the explosive scene unfold, their faces reflecting a mix of shock, discomfort, and concern, while Leon Hatman's anger continued to simmer, his eyes still flashing with resentment, as he struggled to come to terms with the betrayal he felt. And the others exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how to intervene, or whether they should, as the tension between Leon Hatman and the others remained, a palpable, unresolved force, lingering in the air like an unspoken challenge. And Allah Voss's tears fell silently, her face a picture of despair, as she realized the depth of Leon Hatman's hurt and anger, and the difficulty of bridging the gap between them. a gap that seemed to be growing wider by the minute as the silence stretched out, heavy with unspoken words and unresolved emotions, and the others waited, frozen in uncertainty, as the scene hung in the balance, poised on the brink of a precipice from which there might be no return. As Leon Hatman violently pushed Ila Voss away, he rushed towards the factory gate while Ila Voss fell to the ground, finally unable to hold back her tears, which poured out uncontrollably. Meanwhile, Adi and Mula stood calmly on the other side, continuously snacking on melon seeds, indulging in the drama unfolding before his eyes. At that moment, he caught a glimpse of Leon Hatman dashing towards the large gate like an arrow shot from a bow, and he couldn't help but gently shake his head in dismay. By this time, Leon Hatman had completely succumbed to his raging anger, and his only desire was to immediately fling open the tightly shut doors and let the ferocious zombies, with their gnashing teeth and menacing claws, storm into the factory. However, this task was proving to be somewhat difficult, and it seemed like the time had come to quietly retreat from this place. Adi and Mula muttered to himself, while casually brushing off the melon seed fragments stuck to his palm, and then he gave a subtle signal to Sebastian Faulkner and Celeste Beaumont. The two girls immediately understood his intentions and hastily began to gather their belongings, preparing to leave the premises. Gabriel Weiss, who had been watching from a distance, noticed Leon Hatman's frantic rush towards the gate, and his expression swiftly changed. "Leon Hatman, come to your senses. Don't open the door," Gabriel Weiss shouted, quickly giving chase. Nevertheless, Leon Hatman's fury had completely clouded his judgment. He ignored Gabriel Weiss's cries, and instead of slowing down, his pace became even more frantic. "You wretched creatures! I want you all to die, including that insufferable little brat," Leon Hatman exclaimed, his voice trembling with unbridled rage, as he continued to hasten towards the gate, while Adi and Mula watched with a mixture of fascination and trepidation, observing the mayhem unfold with Elias Koenig, Victor Hale, Claw Weiss, and Damien Kella by his side, all of whom were poised to make their escape, leaving the chaos and destruction behind. Leon Hatman was ferociously denied food, and in a fit of rage, he was told to go to a terrible place to eat instead. As the entrance loomed before him, each heavy step feeling like a countdown to demise, causing everyone's heart to pound in anxiety, Elias Koenig resembled an untamed horse, dashing wildly towards the factory gate. His labored breathing and heavy footsteps merged into a tense and intense rhythm. Just as his hand was about to touch the door handle, a figure suddenly emerged before him. It was Ila Voss. She darted out from behind like an arrow shot from a bow. In the blink of an eye, she rushed to Leon Hatman's front, using all her might to tightly hug his waist, attempting to stop his nearly frantic actions. "Leon Hatman, come back to your senses. Don't act impulsively like this. Absolutely do not bring disaster upon us." Ila Voss's voice was interwoven with sobs, but her tone was extremely resolute. At the same time, Adian Mule and Gabriel Weiss also rushed to the scene. They didn't say a word. Gabriel Weiss grasped Leon Hatman tightly, using all his strength to pull him backwards, but at this moment, Leon Hatman seemed to have gained infinite strength. His eyes were filled with blazing flames of hatred. "Let me go. Today is the day of reckoning for all of you. I must make you pay back the blood debt with blood." Leon Hatman's eyes were wide with fury, his voice hoarse from shouting, his entire body continuously twisting and struggling in resistance. Meanwhile, Celeste Beaumont and Sebastian Faulkner also arrived, trying to restrain Leon Hatman as Claw Weiss and Victor Hale approached, attempting to calm the situation, while Damien Kelly watched with a mix of concern and caution. Amidst the chaos, Leon Hatman's anger and hatred only intensified as he continued to struggle and shout, his determination to seek revenge unwavering. As Leon Hatman, Allah Voss, and Adian Mula exerted all their might, they still couldn't placate the extremely infuriated individual, who was now turning to face the closed door, his eyes fixed intently on the trio, and bursts into a maniacal laughter. Ha ha ha! You're finally afraid, are you? You shameless, despicable people. Just wait and see. I'll make you pay dearly for everything you've done, he says as he takes a step back, revealing a nearly deranged smile. And just then, the wandering undead, whose numbers had been gradually decreasing, began to be drawn to the factory after hearing the blood-curdling screams of Leon Hatman and the others. And soon, these ferocious creatures started to gather towards the door with incredible speed, piling up against it, using their bodies to batter the heavy door, producing ear-piercing sounds, and from their gaping mouths, a foul-smelling, bloody liquid continuously flowed out, dripping to the ground, forming puddles of filthy water. And all these undead had in mind was to break into the factory, tear apart the fresh, tender flesh inside, and indulge in a bloody feast. And just as the individual was backing away in horror, a sudden event occurred. The crazed undead outside were using all their might to violently slam into the closed door, each impact causing the door to violently shake. And over time, the initial gap in the door was gradually widening. And finally, a gaunt, skeletal undead seized the opportunity, using all its strength to squeeze inside, and nearby, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, and Gabriel Weiss were watching in dread as the situation unfolded, while Sebastian Falkny and Damien Keller were trying to come up with a plan to handle the impending crisis, and Claw Weiss and Victo Hale were preparing to face the onslaught of the undead horde, as the mayhem outside continued to escalate. After a fierce struggle, Leon Hatman finally managed to squeeze his disfigured head into the doorway. And as he did, his plump behind was directly in front of the undead creature's face, a savory feast that the starving creature couldn't resist. And with a loud biting sound, Leon's behind was instantly bitten into by the creature's sharp teeth, blood gushing out and staining his pants. And the door behind him, under the intense pain, Leon suddenly turned around, his hands flailing wildly as he tried to shake the creature off. But more undead creatures, attracted by the smell of blood, began to frantically bang against the door, the gap growing wider as more heads and arms squeezed through. The chaotic scene was filled with screams, growls, and banging, creating a tragic symphony of the apocalypse. Meanwhile, Ayla Voss and Adian Mula, upon seeing this, quickly reacted, trying to pull Leon away from the creature's mouth while searching for tools to fight back. But the creature's grip was too strong, and they had to beware of other grasping hands. Finally, Leon managed to break free from the creature's bite, but not without losing a large chunk of his behind, and as he cried out in pain, his voice echoed through the air, pleading for help from his loved ones. Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkny, Damien Kell, Claw Weiss, and Victo Hale, all of whom were desperately trying to survive in this desperate situation. As Leon Hatman lay on the ground, his cries of desperation echoed through the workshop, his clothes and eyes stained with fresh blood. While outside, the undead creatures caught the scent of blood and frantically pounded on the door, which creaked ominously as if on the verge of collapse. Ayla Voss and the others watched in horror as Leon Hatman clutched at the ground, moaning pitifully, and Adian Mule, knowing that Leon Hatman would soon succumb to the infection and turn into one of the undead, steeled himself and picked up a steel bar, preparing to end Leon Hatman's suffering. But Leon Hatman's eyes flashed with a desperate plea, begging Adian Mula not to leave him, reminding him of their bond as friends. And Adian Mula's hand wavered, the steel bar glinting coldly in the faint light. As he took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and whispered a sorrowful apology, his voice barely above a whisper, filled with regret and helplessness, as he gripped the steel bar tightly, his eyes revealing a complex mix of emotions. While Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkny, Damien Kell, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale looked on, frozen in a mixture of fear and sorrow, unable to intervene, and Adian Mula's voice seemed to come from the depths of despair as he struggled to come to terms with what he was about to do, his heart heavy with the weight of his impending action. As Leon Hatman's arm muscles tightened, the steel bar started to lift, each small movement appearing laborious. But then he suddenly steeled himself and swung the steel bar with all his might, and in that moment, the wind howled. The steel bar moved with lightning speed, striking Adian Mula's head with immense force, accompanied by a sickening sound. The steel bar pierced Adian Mula's head without hesitation, embedding itself deep into the ground. Blood splattered everywhere, staining the ground red. Adian Mula's eyes turned a lifeless gray. His body convulsed violently, as if trying to struggle one last time. But this pain was short-lived, and soon he lost all signs of life, forever bidding farewell to this world, leaving behind only a cold, lifeless corpse. Exuding the chill of death, Leon Hatman stood there, stunned, tears streaming down his face uncontrollably. Just then, the horde of undead finally broke through the door. The door came crashing down, accompanied by the ear-piercing sound of twisting metal and the excited growls of the undead. A deadly, suffocating atmosphere immediately filled the entire factory. The undead swarmed in like a dark tide, their empty, lifeless eyes glowing with a bloodthirsty light in the dim glow. Drool dripped from their mouths, forming twisted trails on the ground. Leon Hatman, Elah Voss, and Elias Koenig instantly turned pale. The undead, upon entering the factory, were initially drawn to the smell of blood from Adian Mula's corpse. A group of them rushed over, beginning to devour, their hunger and thirst for flesh evident as they fed ravenously. Having gone without a proper meal for days, they voraciously consumed everything, even the bones. And nearby, Celeste Beaumont, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkny, and Damien Kelly watched in horror, while Claw Weiss and Victor Hale stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. Leon Hatman's eyes widened in horror, his face pale, as he let out a loud cry, then turned around and sprinted away without hesitation, heading straight for Elah Voss's location, while Adian Mule, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkny, and Damien Kella were engaged in a fierce battle. Victor Hale and Claw Weiss trying to hold off the hordes of undead. With Leon Hatman's sudden cry, Baktiep and Tonthian's faces immediately turned as white as paper, but they didn't hesitate, closely following Leon Hatman, screaming loudly. The undead initially focused on devouring the remaining bodies, but upon hearing Leon Hatman's sudden cry, they lifted their heads, their empty, soulless eyes gleaming with a hungry and excited glint. And then these ferocious, ugly creatures abandoned the tattered limbs in their hands, letting out a chorus of roaring shrieks, baring their teeth, and charging towards Leon Hatman and the others, each undead resembling a starving wolf, with disgusting, bloody saliva dripping from their mouths, and low, menacing growls emanating from their throats. Rapidly closing the distance to Leon Hatman and the others, Claw Weiss pleaded, panting heavily, her voice almost a whimper. "I really can't run anymore. Please help me." Leon, her face deathly pale, with large beads of sweat rolling down her face, her legs heavy and unresponsive, like lead, knowing she hadn't eaten or drunk much all day, and was already starving, with an empty stomach and being completely inexperienced in physical activity, she had only managed to run a short distance before becoming exhausted, gasping for breath, and struggling to keep up. But despite Claw Weiss's desperate pleas, Leon Hatman didn't even glance back, completely absorbed in his own desperate bid to escape. As he sprinted towards his goal, upon seeing Leon Hatman's uncaring back, Claw Weiss's eyes revealed a deep sense of despair. Just then, the ferocious, gruesome undead finally caught up to her, their jaws open wide, ready to strike. As they pounced, sending her tumbling to the ground, their growls and snarls filling the air. As Leon Hatman desperately cried out for help, a horde of ravenous zombies pinned Ila Voss to the ground, their guttural growls and snarls filling the air, and her terrified screams echoed through the desolate landscape, sending shivers down the spines of anyone who might have been nearby. The sound seeming to pierce the very soul, and just as all hope seemed lost, a zombie in a tattered athletic outfit, its jaws wide open, revealing jagged teeth and a maw full of blood and gore, sank its teeth into Allah's tender neck. The sickening crunch of bone and flesh was followed by the zombie's savage tearing of her skin, and as it ripped away a large chunk of flesh, the other zombies, like ravenous beasts, closed in, their eyes fixed on Ilah, and they began to brutally tear her apart, some biting into her arms, others into her legs, and a few even attacked her abdomen. Within mere seconds, Alea's body was mutilated beyond recognition, her breathing shallow, her stomach ripped open, and her internal organs spilling out. The zombies continued to feed on her lifeless body, lying on the ground, feasting on the gruesome remains. The scene was one of absolute chaos and horror, the air thick with the stench of blood and death, making it hard to breathe. The ground was slick with blood, flesh, and severed limbs, a truly terrifying sight. But just as suddenly, a deafening explosion rocked the ground as Adian Mula finally managed to blast a large hole in the side of the factory. Meanwhile, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkney, Damien Kelly, Claw Weiss, and Victor Hale were presumably still fighting for survival. Amidst the chaos and carnage, the explosion marked a turning point, as the survivors might have seen a glimmer of hope. In the midst of the unrelenting horror, the blast could be their only chance to escape the clutches of the ravenous zombies and make their way to safety, or so they hoped, as they struggled to stay alive in a world that seemed determined to destroy them. As Leon Hatman gazed out at the devastating scene within the factory, a deep sense of sorrow welled up inside him, his eyes falling upon the mangled corpse of Allah Voss, lying in a pool of blood, devoid of any signs of life. Meanwhile, Adian Moulet and Celeste Beaumont were desperately rushing towards him, pursued by a relentless horde of undead. Witnessing the chaos unfolding before him, Leon Hatman felt a sense of hopelessness wash over him, shaking his head in despair. If only the four of them had remained calm and truthful to one another, perhaps they might have stood a chance at survival, persevering until the next day. However, now, Leon Hatman couldn't help but let out a deep sigh, turning to address Sebastian Falkney and Victor Hale, saying, "Let's go," as he led the way, escaping through a hole in the wall and making their way outside the factory. The three of them traversed the rubble-strewn terrain, eventually catching sight of a vast, open road. Without hesitation, Leon Hatman summoned his spatial abilities, and a luxurious off-road vehicle materialized before them. He quickly opened the door, beckoning Sebastian Falkney and Victor Hale to enter, which they did with haste, their faces pale and their eyes filled with a mix of horror and relief. As soon as the last person was seated, Leon Hatman floored it, and the vehicle sped away like a bullet, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake, before disappearing into the distance. Not long after, Elias Koenig arrived at the road, now alone. having callously pushed his companion, Gabriel Weiss, into the clutches of the undead to save himself. Panting heavily, Elias Koenig looked around, searching for Leon Hatman, but found himself completely alone, prompting him to cry out, "Where is everyone? Where did they go?" As Leon Hatman gazed out at the devastating scene within the factory, a deep sense of sorrow welled up inside him, his eyes falling upon the mangled corpse of Allah Voss, lying in a pool of blood, devoid of any signs of life. Meanwhile, Adian Mueller and Celeste Beaumont were desperately rushing towards him, pursued by a relentless horde of undead. Witnessing the chaos unfolding before him, Leon Hatman felt a sense of hopelessness wash over him, shaking his head in despair. If only the four of them had remained calm and truthful to one another, perhaps they might have stood a chance at survival, persevering until the next day. However, now, Leon Hatman couldn't help but let out a deep sigh, turning to address Sebastian Falkney and Victor Hale, saying, "Let's go." As he led the way, escaping through a hole in the wall and making their way outside the factory, the three of them traversed the rubble-strewn terrain, eventually catching sight of a vast open road. Without hesitation, Leon Hatman summoned his spatial abilities, and a luxurious off-road vehicle materialized before them. He quickly opened the door, beckoning Sebastian Falkney and Victor Hale to enter, which they did with haste, their faces pale, and their eyes filled with a mix of horror and relief. As soon as the last person was seated, Leon Hatman floored it, and the vehicle sped away like a bullet, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake, before disappearing into the distance. Not long after, Elias Koenig arrived at the road, now alone, having callously pushed his companion, Gabriel Weiss, into the clutches of the undead to save himself. Panting heavily, Elias Koenig looked around, searching for Leon Hatman, but found himself completely alone, prompting him to cry out, "Where is everyone? Where did they go?" Leon Hatman was drenched in sweat, but he didn't dare to let his guard down for a moment. Maintaining his high level of concentration to handle any unexpected situation that might arise, ensuring the safety of everyone on board, as they had been driving for about 2 hours, and the scorching afternoon sun was oppressive, when suddenly, a young girl darted out onto the road ahead, collapsing onto the ground, prompting Leon Hatman to exclaim in shock before slamming on the brakes, the vehicle coming to an abrupt halt. The sudden stop sending Adian, Mueller, and Ayla Voss tumbling forward in their seats, their eyes wide with horror as they stared out the window. Leon Hatman remained in his seat, his expression frozen as he glanced at the surrounding area, his instincts warning him that something was off. He then turned to Adian Mueller and Ella Voss, his eyes resolute, asking if they should check on the girl, instructing them to stay in the vehicle with the doors locked, emphasizing the importance of their safety before stepping out into the sweltering heat and tense atmosphere, walking towards the girl lying on the ground, her clothes disheveled, her face pale, but still clinging to life, barely able to keep her eyes open. Leon Hatman stood beside her, one hand reaching into his pocket where his de-eagle pistol was, ready to respond to any potential danger. His expression unyielding as he thought to himself that if the situation called for it, he would show no mercy, recalling a previous encounter where a young boy had cooperated and handed over his belongings without resistance, but also remembering the warning that if the boy had refused, he would have been dealt with ruthlessly. A stern reminder that in such situations, one had to be prepared to take drastic measures to ensure one's own safety. As Leon Hatman and his companions, including Ila Voss, Adian Mueller, Celeste Beaumont, Elias Koenig, Gabriel Weiss, Sebastian Falkney, Damien Kelly, Claude Weiss, and Victor Hale, journeyed on. They were confronted by two menacing figures who emerged from the dark, their rugged faces twisted with malice, each clutching a gleaming, razor-sharp machete that glinted ominously in the sunlight, casting a chill over the entire scene. Their cold, calculating gazes fixed greedily on Leon Hatman, their smiles sly and menacing, making everyone's blood run cold. And it was then that Leon Hatman's face turned ashen, his eyes widening in alarm as he realized that the situation was far more complex and sinister than he had initially thought. For these two men, who were siblings, had been driven by desperation and a lust for survival in the face of the horrific zombie outbreak that had ravaged the land, forcing them to flee to the mountains, where they had initially believed they could outrun the zombies, but soon found themselves facing a new and even more terrifying reality as their food supply rapidly dwindled, and in a shocking and horrific turn of events, they had callously abandoned their 7-year-old half-sister on the road, using her tiny, innocent body as bait to lure in unsuspecting motorists, whom they would then threaten and rob, having already claimed 3 groups of survivors in just one morning, feasting on their supplies and plundering their valuables. And now, the little girl, who had been left for dead, lay on the cold, hard ground, her eyes fluttering open, her small body racked with pain, her once bright and innocent eyes now brimming with fear and despair, tears streaming down her face like pearls, as she stared up at the two men who had once been her family, but were now her tormentors. Leon Hatman used all his might, slowly raising a small hand, his voice as faint as a whisper, like a candle flame in the wind, which could be extinguished at any moment, and he said, "Please save me." Upon hearing this plea, Eli Voss's nerves were like being gently touched, stirring up a wave. He knew he wasn't a saint with a compassionate heart, but facing this pitiful girl in front of him, his heart couldn't help but stir up a complex emotion. And just at that moment, the system, which had been quiet for a while, suddenly sent a reminder. The hidden mission was to rescue the girl, teach the spoiled kid a lesson, and accumulate points, making the kid's life not worth living. So it was a win-win. Not only could he save her, but also get a large amount of accumulated points. Leon Hatman became even more determined to save her. Meanwhile, Adian Mulla looked at the off-road vehicle. His eyes immediately turned lustful, greedily glancing at Celeste Beaumont and Elias Koenig in the car. The corner of his mouth curled up in an evil smile. Leon Hatman remained extremely calm, turning around, his eyes fixed on the two people, his voice low but firm. "What's your relationship with this kid?" "Haha, you're talking about this little servant. She's my half-sister. Her value is to be a tool, to be exploited by us. It's her honor," Gabriel Weiss said with a hint of disdain in his eyes as he looked at Claw Weiss. "I'll give you some food and water. I want to take this kid away." Sebastian Faulkner said, his eyes filled with a quiet determination. Damien Kell and Victor Hale remained silent, observing the scene unfold, while Leon Hatman's eyes never left Adian Mulla's face, his gaze piercing and unyielding. Leon Hatman spoke up, to which Adian Mulla raised an eyebrow, a sly smile spreading across his face as he said, "You think you're joking with me, kid? You want my car, my water, my food, and even my woman, but you get lost or die here." And with that, he raised the hacksaw in his hand, his threatening intentions clear. Leon Hatman's smile grew colder, a glint of icy light flashing in his eyes, and he slowly pulled out the D-Eagle from his lower back, the black gun gleaming as he pointed it directly at Adian Mulla, his tone cold and resolute, saying, "Initially, I wanted to interact with you all as a normal person, but in return, I only got rejection. So I'm done pretending. I'll be straight with you. I have a gun." Adian Mulla and Elias Koenig burst out laughing at the sight. "Ha ha, that's hilarious. You're using a toy gun to scare people. How pathetic. Even robbers use fake guns to intimidate, and when I cut off their hands, they're left with nothing. Absolutely no creativity. Where did you even get that gun from, kid?